I'm just gonna lay back and I'ma drop some smooth lyrics. So tune in 7 to 9:30 and don't be late. We about to set it straight. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J. Word. I'm ready, let's go. Ain't no half stepping, that's the name of the show. Yeah, Marcus J hosting and we ready to go. Yeah, Hunter talk sprinkled with a dash of humor to the legacy listeners and the online viewers. What you wanna talk about, call it, we're hearing you. Cover all topics, touch on the main issues. With the flow in this show, bring the heat. The word on the street, Wizard Earl on the beat. We superb in the B, legacy online. 7 to 9:30, please be on time. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J, my brother. If they can't hang, word to their mother. And he been on this grind for a while. The brother so smart, plus brother got style. Up in Richmond, we on the mission, we full force. And listen up, this Marcus Stage start to talk, running back. And he been on this grind for a while. The brother so smart, plus brother got style. Up in Richmond, we on the mission, we full force. And listen up, this Marcus Stage start to talk. Steppin' is the name of the show. Yeah, Marcus J hosting and we ready to go. Yeah, Hunter's talk sprinkled with a dash of humor to the legacy listeners and the online viewers. What you wanna talk about, call it, we're hearing you. Cover all topics, touch on the main issues. With the flow in this show, bring the heat. The word on the street, Wizard Earl on the beat. We superb in the D, legacy online. 7 to 9:30, please be on time. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J, my brother. If they can't hang, word to their mother. And he been on this grind for a while. My brother so smart, plus brother got style. Up in Richmond, we on the mission, we full force. And listen up, this Marcus Stage start to talk.
All right, y'all. Ain't no half step with Marcus J is live. We are in the building, New Den, Legacy in that radio. We got an action-packed show tonight. We got a bunch of topics that we're going to get to tonight. We obviously got to talk about the news of the day. And if you're watching television, listening to the news, and you're going to have an idea, but I ain't going to tease it here because I want you to listen until after the intro. Marcus J and the crew and you. Ain't no half step with Marcus J is live right now.
Yeah. It's about that time. It's about that time to get. Yeah.
Button your lip. Open your ears. Strap on your thinking cap. Socially conscious talk that's entertaining with a dash of humor and the top sports stories of the week. It's time for Ain't No Half Steppin' with Marcus J.
Sellers has Jordan. Jordan with 2 seconds to go. Puts it up and scores at the buzzer. Michael Jordan has won it for Chicago. Manning lobs it. Burris alone. Touchdown, New York.
Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. He hits one deep to right center. That ball is out of here. The Yankees win the pennant.
Ain't no half step with Marcus J is live. We in the building. Be down with us tonight at 804-402-2893. Be down with the flagship show heard live from New Den of Legacy Internet Radio. Thank you, everybody that's rocking with us tonight. We appreciate those folks that are checking us out on Facebook Live, those folks checking us out on YouTube Live, and those folks that are checking out our archives on our website, www.legacyinternetradio.com. We appreciate y'all for rocking with us as we continue to roll with you. So as we do at this part of the show, we always get our salutations in, get in the usual suspects. Of course, the brother joins me every single Monday night here in his spot, in his perch across from me. My brother, partner, and friend, my brother John is with us. What up, do, homie?
What's up, my brother? How's it going?
Doing very well, brother. Very well. You doing all right?
I'm good. How was the weekend?
Had a good weekend. I can't complain. You know,
You didn't drown? You didn't drown?
I didn't drown. You know, let's see. Saturday, I literally did nothing. I didn't even move my car. Saturday, I watched the Suicide Squad.
I watched that too.
I enjoyed the Suicide Squad. I got to tell you, I did. And then, of course, yesterday, Sunday, I spent the day at the river, and then I did my yoga last night. So,
And the Yankees won.
and the Yankees swept this weekend. Chicago White Sox. They didn't win on Thursday, the Field of
they
Dreams
lost at
game,
the Field of Dreams,
but they
yeah.
won the last two Saturday and Sunday. So let's get our sister in. Of course, she
Hey, sis.
sits right next to me on my right because she is my right hand. She's my sister and yours, Steppin. What up?
Hello, fellas.
How you
Hey.
doing? How you doing?
Hey, good. I cannot complain. Always forward, looking ahead, trying to make this week a better week. That's it.
Yeah,
you know?
man. It's always good to see you.
Thank you. It's
Did-
always good to see you, gentlemen, and catch up with you.
Even
and-
him?
Mhm, even that guy.
Even him?
Even that guy.
Yeah. So
It's always good. It's nice to be in your company.
we appreciate that. We enjoy you as well. Did you have a good weekend?
I did. You know what I figured out during the pandemic is I'm okay with introverted moments. I can't do it as long as other people can. The extrovert in me can't really handle it after a while, and I know my limits on it, but I like a reason to not be bothered. So I feel the same way about rain. I'm so excited when a rainy day comes because there's no expectation that I'm showing up and doing anything. So I got a lot of work done. I did start watching the Suicide Squad. I haven't completed it. I watched the documentary we're going to talk about. And yeah, I just kept it low key. I ate good food. I chilled out, had some libations and other things, and, made it a weekend that was just about me. I'm not going to complain at all.
Libations.
Libations.
That's
yes.
always the good part.
Yes. Yeah. It's
Well-
like I can do this without judgment because it's
Spirits.
Saturday.
With the spirits.
That's right.
Hey man, I'm gonna tell you something. That sometimes is a necessary evil.
Yes.
It is what it is. So tonight's one of those nights. We so jammed.
Damn.
We just gonna get right to it. We are talking about a few things tonight. For those folks that are already here, share this, like this, and share this in your social media. If you're there with us, help us grow, help us get more folks to rock with us. Because tonight, we're gonna be talking about leaving Afghanistan. We're going to talk about how white people are going to be the minority of the future. We're going to talk about mandatory employer imposed vaccines with a focus on the National Football League. There's a documentary out on Netflix that talks about the Malice in the Palace. And for those folks who don't know what that was the Indiana Pacers in Detroit playing the Pistons when a brawl broke out back in 2004. Many of us remember that. And those who don't, we're going to talk about it tonight. And then lastly, if we get to all of these topics, hopefully a lot of times we have grand expectations to get through to everything, and hopefully we will. Last thing that we plan to get to is Star Trek star Nichelle Nichols going through her private battle with dementia and the conservativeship. And this is an important thing because you have a lot of elderly brothers and sisters with us today that are dealing with a lot of the same things that she's dealing with and her family. So we'll be getting to those topics hopefully as we move through the show tonight. So that's the setup, and anything that may come up, if we feel we need to make a divergence, then we will appropriately. 804-402-2893 is the number to dial. You want to rock with us, we'll roll with you. So let's get it, Steph. The Afghanistan government was overthrown by the Taliban, and we know the prior president had made it so that our troops would leave that country, and our current president made sure that it happened. And so we have since left the Afghanistan country. Now, let's just add this piece to it in the interest of clarity. We actually trained the Afghani people to defend themselves.
Yeah.
and the Afghanistan president made sure once the Americans was gone, and he saw that the Taliban was slowly taking over cities in the country, that he bounced before they even got to the capital. And here you have these people taking pictures in their capital. You know, it kind of reminds me of something that happened in the United States back on January 6th. But I'll throw that shade later on when it's my turn to talk. What you got, sis?
At some point, we can't be the gatekeepers to everybody's problems, and we need to get comfortable with that. But there's always usually there's some kind of financial resource or reason that we're in these things that are much deeper than just, hey, we're coming over here to help. I have to believe there's more to it. Obviously, they are a mineral rich country. They're not an oil rich country. They are a mineral rich country. Poppy fields are a huge thing there. They export the bases for heroin out of poppy fields in Afghanistan. So there's lots of reasons beyond us trying to paint them as a part of a terror threat to us post 9/11 that we stayed there. But 20 years is a long time. And, I'm starting to think that this is one of those times where teaching a man to fish is not enough. We stayed there for 20 years teaching a man to fish. Okay, you guys are going to protect yourself. We're training their soldiers. We're training their police force, helping them set up their political structure. And the minute we say we're leaving, they did not hold up their end of the bargain. So I do think he makes a good point. Biden makes a good point that the unfortunate thing is we can't stay there forever. And at some point, we had to make them prove that they could do this on their own. Do I think it was done efficiently and effectively? No. Clearly, we didn't live up to some of the ideals of the rules of engagement and when you're leaving the engagement of warfare or spaces like that. But I just don't, there's a lot of money that was poured in there in 20 years that could have been utilized here. We have issues with public health. We clearly post-pandemic and during the pandemic have proven that there are a lot of areas we could afford to help marginalized communities. I would dare say we could have covered some of reparations with it. There's just a million things that could happen with 20 years worth of money. To see the base empty and they left behind thousands of bicycles. They left behind vehicles. It's to me I know people would want me to be focused on the human element, but a lot of things happen here with us that people are not concerned about. What I'm more concerned about is we have got to stop wasting the resource of the American taxpayer. We just throw good money after bad wars all the time. So what do you think, Sean?
You are on point as usual.
Well, thank you.
My whole thing is I have a little backstory to this whole situation, and everything that you said is what is the narrative as it is presented, and it had nothing to do with any of that. The bottom line with that was they couldn't deal with Saddam Hussein anymore because he would not accept US dollars for oil. He wanted gold for his oil. And they said, we're going to kill you for that. And they killed him. And then they did the same thing to Gaddafi because he said, I will not accept US dollars for oil. I want gold.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put my continent of Africa on a gold standard for one economy. It's no, you're going to die.
And even though he was crooked and not good for his people, he skewed things to what this is the thing. I'm sorry, I'll let you get back to your point, but I want to agree with you on. It's interesting that a lot of the wars that we get involved with or generate, to be very honest, that we create as a response to, we create war as a response to things we do ourselves. We prioritize Americanism. We prioritize American ideals wherever we go. We prioritize shifting people to the American ideal, down to telling people how they should practice their religion, what it should look like, so on and so forth. We get involved in conversations that don't need our voice.
These are the crusades.
Yeah.
We're selling Christianity at the end of a sword. You just changed it to a bullet. And plus you gotta remember too, we pay a lot of people a lot of money to make bullets, right? If we don't shoot people, we won't need bullets. And then these people who pay for these politicians to be in office won't make money. So then the politicians won't get their money. So we got to go war someplace. They're going to shift most of these people. They'll be home for about a half a day and they're going to Africa. Because we're going to start making positions against China and their insurgents into Africa. So, look, Saddam Hussein's, say what you want about him. He was the only person in that area with high-ranking women in his government. Women held jobs, were educators and educated. He wasn't the norm of what he wasn't a Taliban type fella, right? He had a progressive idea for his country, although it was under his rule. The country as a whole was a progressive place. But again, if you're not going to dance to the tune that we play, we're going to take you out. Same thing happened to, like, I don't know. I saw something on one of the social media things about all of these presidents and prime ministers who died over the last 18 months in places that held adverse opinions to China and or the US. They just started dropping. Right? So now you get into this situation where we've been there for 20 years. We shouldn't have been there at all. But if America's not fighting a war, America's going broke. Right? Because that's what we do. We are violent. We are violent and we are destructive. And if we can't be violent and destructive, then we're not going to make any money. So that's just Afghanistan was the place. Iraq was the place. We pulled out of there and we pulled out of there. Hey, listen, I always tell people I'm not the smartest guy I know. And I'm the dumbest guy I know. And I know you get the civilians out first and you lead the military. So Biden knew that. All the generals knew that. They needed to get all of the people, all of the translators, the school teachers, all the people. They built small cities there for these people, for the Halliburton people. And those bicycles that cost $10 to manufacture, the U.S. government probably paid $1,000 per bicycle for that.
Yeah,
because that's how those no bid contracts go. That's my man Dick Cheney, how he orchestrates that.
Blackwater, Halliburton,
all of those,
not just Dick Cheney, DeVos, Betsy
DeVos
brother.
Yeah, all of those people, they big time money with that. So
you could go over there and drive a truck. I remember seeing this back a few years back, looking at just contractor jobs, because you start reading through it and it piques your curiosity. Like, what are we paying for? And to be a delivery truck driver, they were paying $215 an hour on contract.
Yes,
because it's life. It's endangering, obviously.
But it's money you never spend because they have a commissary, they have clothes, they have everything they need, they have housing. They pay for nothing.
Right. And you get hazard pay and everything else. So it's not taxable income until you return. And
and the first 125,000 of it isn't taxed anyway because it's foreign earned.
So it comes down to the fact that, agreeing with you, war, when you are in a position of power, does generate revenue. Right. And we probably are, not we, but people at a certain level are probably like, yeah, we were there 20 years and we only lost almost 4,000 contractors and almost 3,000 troops. Right. Literally, the contractor loss of life is 1,000 higher. The number's 1,000 people higher than the soldier. Lives that were lost in that period of time.
How Steppin Marcus J live from New Dan Legacy and that radio. Let's get some love in from the family. Let's see. James is checking in. He's saying peace. Our sister Kula Von Seal is here. She's saying peace. Kula scheduled to be in studio with us in September. Okay. So we're looking forward to having her. Our brother Sam is back for more knowledge. What's up, brother? Appreciate you, man. You make me smile when I see you in here, man. Appreciate you rocking. Our brother Hakeem is making his long awaited return back to the family, and I appreciate you, brother.
Welcome.
Hakeem says wars are fought for one reason: markets to create new ones, protect the ones you have, or to take over someone else's. Real talk. Let's see. Big cousin Tony is checking in. He's chucking up the deuces, and he's saying peace to us and the family. So peace to you, cuz. He is checking in. And let's see. I got one more comment in there that I'm trying to see. And our brother Bobby is checking in, saying what's good to the family. So peace
What
to
up,
you
bro?
as well. Ain't no hashtag Marcus J live from New Dan Legacy and that radio. 804-402-2893 is the number to dial. You want to rock with us? We'll roll with y'all. So let's see. John said the Suicide Squad was trash.
You said that?
I know that's not what I said. And when we get to it,
yeah,
I will give the proper translation of what I said. Because I did not say that.
Well, Steph hasn't seen it, so I don't know that I want to go all the way.
This is what I'll say real quick.
I do have an opinion about it.
This is what I'll say.
If you
quick.
got an opinion, then we can get.
Which might be why you heard me say I haven't finished.
Okay, so here we go. This is the
what
thing.
You got, John?
What I said was, here's the problem. I liked the first one. I didn't hate it. Everybody hated the first one. I didn't hate it. I thought it was good for what it was.
Right.
Because I didn't have an expectation of it to be Oscar worthy.
Right.
Right. So it was good for what it was. I felt the same way about this one. For what it was, I felt the same way about both movies. Now, because John, my son, believes that
that's John.
The
Jr.
first
John,
one,
you confused me
because
I was like,
he said that I said it was trash. What happened was, since I told him I felt the same way about the first one as I do the second one, he thinks that the first one is trash. So
because the first one was trash.
So by saying that, he's saying that I'm saying the second one is trash. I'm not saying either one is trash. I'm saying they are what they are. They're campy movies.
Here's what I will say, real quick, and then we're gonna move on to other stuff. Right? The Suicide Squad, I enjoyed it thoroughly. Absolutely enjoyed it thoroughly because I had zero expectations because the first one was trash, and because everybody told me that this one was so terrible not to watch it. And so when I watched it, I went into it with very low expectations and came away with the kind of movie that little boys think is great. And and the little boy in me thought it was great. I mean, they blew up shit and heads exploded and things got eaten and you had people in funny outfits, as bad guys doing good guy stuff. I mean, I actually thought that this I'm not gonna say it was Oscar worthy or none of that. That's not what we're doing. But for it to be a popcorn Saturday night superhero movie, it absolutely served its purpose, one. And for two, I'll go out on a limb and say, even though I'm a DC guy, Marvel, I respect and I love, but I'm a DC guy at heart. And to me, in the last 20 years, it ranks no lower than fifth best in all of the DC movies, because for the most part, they're terrible. So you got Aquaman.
That is
you
very
got
true.
Wonder Woman. You got what's the Shazam movie, and then you got the Justice League movie that came out on HBO Max earlier this year. That long ass epic that felt like an hour because it was that freaking great. And then you got Suicide Squad and everything else. Because Man of Steel trilogy, I'm not a Batman guy. Like, Batman ain't got no superpowers.
That's like saying you in the Marvel, but you're not a Spider-Man guy.
I love that this sounds like a debate in a college dorm room where the guys are chilling and chiefing and talking.
So Batman has zero superpowers. He's
not really a superhero.
He's wildly overrated. And just
He's
because
so
you
not
saw,
overrated.
just because you saw, he got money.
That's his superpower.
He's Iron Man without the suit.
Oh, that's my dude though.
No,
He's
he's much
man.
more than Iron Man without the suit.
Nah, he ain't. He's
he
Iron Man without
no.
the personality.
Nah, he's
In
what
the
he
clips.
is. What he
Yes, I
is
love
more.
Iron
What
Man. Iron
what
Man's my guy.
what
Batman whack
Batman
his head.
what
I
Batman
love
is
Iron
more than anything else is he's the master detective.
Unless
Right?
it's Adam West.
No, he's the
Bam!
Pow!
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 okay.
Bam!
Well, for people who don't like Batman or think Batman is overrated, that means they really don't understand Batman.
See, don't do
This
that.
is what
Don't do
I'm.
that.
Yeah,
Don't
that's,
do
you know
that.
what that
Don't do
sounds
that.
like.
You know what that
For
is?
people that really don't understand Jesus, you just haven't dug
Yeah,
deep enough.
you know what I mean.
Stop it,
So
sir.
I know.
Come on, sir.
I know I'm about to get in
We're
trouble.
questioning this for a reason.
I know I'm about to get in trouble. I said what I said, and I say what I say, no matter who's in the room. But we gotta first
Batman is the only
gotta-
human being who can sneak up on Superman.
we gotta give our love to our special listener, and we do it together every week.
Good morning, Sue.
Sue is Batman.
We got our
She
we
is
got
Batman.
our harmonies. So
Yeah, we
just
got
for
it good.
you.
We got it right. Now, Sue is Batman. Like, if you know her, you know that she embodies Batman. So I know that when I see her, I'm gonna have to pay for this. I know
For saying that Batman's
yeah,
trash. We
yeah.
want it on record.
Yeah, and I did say it, and I do mean
7:23
it because
Eastern.
we've been doing Batman versus Superman for a long time. Superman could beat up Batman.
Of course,
let,
he
let
can.
me
As
say
I
what
said.
I think about
That's not the point.
the movie. What I thought. First of all, I just felt like it was everything that Deadpool does so well. They tried to make this movie do,
I will agree with that.
But they
and
tried
it,
and did
and
not
it failed
do it
for me.
yeah,
miserably.
And now, you know, and I also realized, and this is probably sacrilegious for me to say, I also realized Idris ain't always fine. Yes, I said it. He ain't. This was one of those moments where I was like, meh.
So
but I will tell you this about Idris, right? There ain't too many people that I've seen in television and film
With his range.
that has, well, I wasn't gonna say that, but yes, I agree with that.
Mhm.
But just the natural charisma and swag.
And
Like,
that is true.
I mean, he just got a swag about him. Going all the way back
Yeah.
to Stringer Bell, right before he caught the bullet, he was like, "Well, get on with it." And then
I-
like this
I
is just
call
this
it
dude is.
FRPS, fruit roll up panty swag.
Oh my goodness!
You know,
Well, I'll be
he's so
mad.
dope. It's just like your panties feel like fruit roll ups. They just come right off,
Let me
right off
get-
the paper.
all right, so
Hold on, John. Let me get these comments in, and then you take the last word on this before we move on. Sam says, "I am disappointed in how we left all those people who looked up to us in a terrible situation. I know we can't carry everybody, but I don't think we will ever know what the U.S. really got out of the deal."
We just like we don't know about half the wars, but what is really been gotten
we
out
got
of
a
it. I
lot of
agree with
heroin
them.
out the deal.
I agree with them.
So
Yeah.
so Sam took us back to being grown
Yeah,
up.
Good,
being-
good.
Well,
Thank you,
you know,
Sam.
Thank you,
But
Sam.
I will
Thank you,
also,
Sam.
to agree with Sam, I will say it was extremely difficult to watch those planes take off and people holding on to
Falling
the
off
planes
of the plane
Running.
and
in a minute.
somebody falling
I
on.
so didn't care. Like,
You did not want to
Sorry.
be there so bad that you thought you could hang on to the outside of a plane at 45,000 feet, because that's how high that C-17 was going to go. Watching that, I was like, these are the decisions I don't know.
It's hard because we as 22nd century Americans, black, white, male, female, gay, straight, whatever we are, we have our challenges,
Absolutely.
but we ain't got nothing like
We ain't
that.
dealing with that.
We're not dealing with that. And
I'm not
it's,
holding
it's,
on
it's
to the
hard
outside of a plane to leave
to
here.
imagine the kind of desperation and disparity that you must be feeling that you show up at the airport. John, I'm gonna give you an opportunity, but let me just say this, right? Because I haven't spoken on this, and we'll go back. We'll have our final comment on the cartoon, on the movie.
Yeah.
Get these comments in, and then we will shift because time tonight is really short. But when we look at what went on there in Afghanistan, it's difficult for me to have a lot of sympathy because I'm one that's more concerned with domestic issues and the fact that I can get a free COVID shot, but my dad can't get free insulin. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So we pick and choose our battles when it comes to medicinal things, or we have people who have so many millions that you can't even fathom, but then you have people who literally live under the bridge, and they'll say it's the American way, and capitalism is just what we do in this country, and I can dig it. I mean, we all are on our level of financial stability, and some of us are okay and some of us are not okay, and I realize that I can dig that, but it's more about what goes on here. If I look at my neighborhood where I live, I'm gonna be concerned first about my house and my yard and my grass and my comfort. Now, I rocks with my neighbor, but I'm not finna cut his grass. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not finna do none of the stuff that he's supposed to be doing in his yard. Now, we're allies, because I want to use the terminology that we can all understand in this greater conversation. So, yeah, we are allies, and to take it all the way back to the old neighborhood, I remember when we was on Arlington 167, where I grew up in Jersey City, we always used to grab the rock and we would go to other neighborhoods and see who could go against us. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And we took care of Arlington. We might go down to Bayside. We might go up to Audubon. We might go down to the other side of Arlington. We're going to take the rock and we're going to stick together. For those folks who don't know, the basketball, the rock, the basketball, and we're going to protect our neighborhood. We wanted to make sure that they were straight, but we not worrying about them on that level. We spent 20 years in that country, and the last administration, one of the things that they did and said that I agree with is fuck out of there. Now it's a bad, terrible thing what's going on there, and they've been left vulnerable to terrorists, and knowing that they've been left vulnerable to terrorists could potentially leave them open to more bad stuff happening that could potentially spill out on us on a greater scale than what happened on 9/11. That's the problem that a lot of folks are seeing and having, and I'm not lost to that. I can dig all of that. But it's been 20 years. Get your shit together, Afghanistan. We can't be here forever. America is always everybody's big brother.
Absolutely.
And we always got our hands in other folks' too. And at some point, you got to say, I remember being a kid in the old neighborhood and scrapping. And if I had 10 fights, I lost 6 of them. I wasn't good at it. I ain't lose all the time. But my older brother might come along and be like, look, man, I can't come out here and take over them 6. You need to add that 6 to your 4. Get it together, and that's what I say to the rest of the world, including Afghanistan. And it's sad and it's terrible what's going on. It's how I feel about the people who's coming in here from the southern border.
Yeah.
You got a lot of conservatives that are a lot more aggressive in this opinion, but I'm like, look, man, I know that you're dealing with some terrible stuff in your country. Hey, I can dig it. You can't come here the right way, then don't come here. Don't get mad if we shut you down at the border. You can't come here the way you want to come here. I know that you might die in your country. I understand that. Hey, look, it's a terrible thing. But if I'm at my crib where I live and I see you running and somebody's running behind you with a gun, I don't think I'm opening the door.
Right.
And I'm not trying to be harsh here. And if anybody that thinks that I'm trying to be harsh, you just don't know my heart. You can call me, question me on anything that I'm saying, and we can talk about it at 804-402-2893. I'm going to get these last comments in. John's going to take the last word on the movie if he chooses to, and then we're going to move on. Ain't no hashtag Marcus J. Live from New Den, Legacy Internet Radio. All right, so Sue's fussing at me. I'm a Batman guy. Yes, Sue, I know, and I know I'm going to pay for that. I expect to see you at some point this week, and you can give it to me then because your brother's going to be in town and we're going to have some fun this week. So our sister Bessie says Batman was rich and fine. Looks at money. Only thing that matters. I ain't mad. I ain't mad. And Bessie continues, yes, Steph. So she's agreeing with you. Hakeem says Batman would lose all his powers if the IRS ordered it. Hakeem always got a Jew. He always got a Jew. I love this man. Bessie says so much money, the way he's going to outer space just to turn around and come back. Now, we didn't talk a lot about that, But that's some real talk. You
That's
had 2 billionaires that
real
went
talk.
to space and charged people $1 million to
go.
catch a ride.
And they
So,
really ain't go with us.
well, yeah, okay. Probably not. That I ain't gonna debate. Yes, I think they went, but I'm sure you.
No.
It's not like they went and
they
did
didn't go
what?
to the
They didn't
space
go
station.
into space.
Yeah, Louis.
They went right there to where you start losing weightlessness, and they flew back down. They didn't.
Yeah, but
Space is a whole really.
I mean,
another
but
thing,
do
bro.
you
Isn't
have
that
to
kinda
do
s-
exactly
kinda
what
space
the
like we
people
seen them
on the
floating?
Explorer do to be? They
We seen
went
them
0
floating.
gravity,
It's
right?
not like they was on the Starship Enterprise.
They look well. Listen, listen, and what you just said is absolutely right. They was not living long and prospering,
I
right?
can't stand
But
you. I'm over
that's
y'all
and
already.
listen,
You know what I'm saying?
and what and that
Oh,
that
gosh.
comment is perfect for what I was going to talk about. Not really with the Suicide Squad, but we can get to that in a whole nother day. Whatever. Watch the movie. It's good enough to watch. All right? It's all about talking points and narratives, and like what kills me is as much as Trump as a president disgusted me. Just made my whole insides like turn flips. He brought one thing to light that needed to come to light. That everybody talking all shit is talking shit. Ain't none of it true. I mean, just very little bits of something, and then they just build a whole line of bullshit around it, right? To make it into something, to get people talking about something, because there's something else going on someplace that they don't want you to see what's going. Look over here, while over here on the other side, they doing something real corrupt and jacked up. Nobody in the U.S. government who ain't from Afghanistan give a good goddamn about anything or anyone in Afghanistan. We did not go over there to help. We really ain't go over there to get what's his face. We went over there to cause chaos and disruption, and that's what we did. And when it got nice and good, they was like, "Wait a minute, this isn't what we want. We need chaos and disruption over here. So let's leave." And they let the maniacs back in, right? And that was it. If they wanted Afghanistan, or if they wanted any of that stuff to be stable, but see, the problem is this. It's like money, right? Money money ain't really money. It's just the value that people put on it, right? We only got one pie. We got the earth, that's it. The only way I can be richer is for you to be poor. That's full stop. So we can't stabilize the area and have all of these democracies working well, because then Israel wouldn't be special. So we got to keep every place else the craziest, most jacked up place in the world, so that Israel is special. So that people will never call them to task for throwing people out in the street and killing all the Palestinians, and never sticking to the treaty that they signed in the 60s to keep the land where it was supposed to be, right? Which was bad enough, but they won't even adhere to that. So in order to not pay any attention to that, and all of the humanitarian, disgusting things that they do there, we'll just make every place else worse, right? And that's what we do as a country. We're nobody's big brother except for Israel. We're nobody else's big brother. We don't care about nobody else. We're not trying to help anybody else. All we're trying to do is sell bullets and kill people, right? So if you can't afford to buy our weapons and we can't come over there and kill a bunch of y'all don't have any purpose for us. So we'll just go do some other things. And that's what it came down to with that. They could have pulled a seventh grader could have designed a better exit. And anybody who thinks is anything other than that, you're delusional. I mean, forget about the real history. You can look at the history books, which is mostly bullshit, and see all we ever do is kill and destroy people. Since the beginning of our existence as a nation, a corporation, whatever you want to call us, right? Since there was such a thing as United States of America, all we've done is murder. So there you go.
It's hard to argue with that point because it's based in fact, and you have people who drape themselves in the American flag that have so much patriotism that they don't want to speak on what is the truth. When you look at the founding of our country and the wording that was used and the things that were done to our people, I don't want to get into this whole people of color thing. I'm talking about black people, just straight black people, our perspective. You can't argue with what John just said. How do you take over land? You take over land by killing people, by taking what you want that someone else already has. And I think that we spend so much time not acknowledging the facts because the facts make us not seem great, that
Right.
we alienate the people who would ride with you even in your bullshit. People would ride with you if you just keep it funky. If you just keep it funky. And America don't want to keep it funky. America wants to say that we're the greatest place in the world and that our ideals are better than everybody else and we are the moral compass of the world and that we're everybody's big brother. And hey, man, it's hard for me to argue with any of that. I'm not a military person, but I am somebody that has common sense and I am somebody that studied history. And it's hard for me. To be a black man in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a state of perpetual rage. James Baldwin said that 50 years ago. 50 years ago, he said that, and it's still true. So when I see what's going on in Afghanistan, man, my heart it goes out to the people that are affected, but it don't go out to them no more than it go out to the family of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Oscar Grant and Romali Graham and John Crawford and Trayvon Martin, you know what I'm saying, and Terrence Crutcher, you know what I'm saying, and Freddie Gray and people like that. Those are the people who I am the most connected to with regards to humanitarian things happen to them in a bad way. Foreign policy, you got to have it, but America don't give a fuck about its own people. So I'm supposed to give a fuck about the Afghanis? I don't want nobody to die. So don't take what I'm saying that way. But I care more about my people dying here. Ain't no how stepping with Marcus J. live from New Den, Legacy, Internet Radio. Speaking of white people.
What? What?
You like that transition, right?
Yeah.
Everybody just went and looked at their screen like,
I don't
like, speaking of white people. Speaking of white people, there was the 2020 census that just came out. And in the 2020 census, it talked about what we have been told for the last few years, where the number of white people is beginning to shrink. The number of Latinos is beginning to grow. The number of Asian is beginning to grow. And even on a small scale,
we kind of
the
stayed
many-
the same.
we went up 5%.
We went down one and back up one. We went to
12 point.
We there was the number, the amount of people, the amount of black people rose, but the overall number didn't change that
Yeah,
much.
the percentage did it.
The percentage of us didn't change that much, but there was growth. It was growth for every demographic except for white people.
Let me say, I mean, do you care when you're 57% of the population? Yes, they care.
Of course, of course they care. Because
Never
I
mind
remember
the fact that no one is within even 20 points of catching up right now.
well, the reason why we care is I remember being in my 20s
No, I don't
and
mean
seeing
we care.
well, yeah.
They care for a
They-
whole other reason.
I remember being in my 20s and seeing the same study come out, and it projected that by the year 2050, that they would be the minority.
The browning of America,
they
which
will-
is what they're worried about.
They will be the minority to the Latino people,
Mhm.
who will be the majority. And then when you add the rest of us,
people of color.
you
We
know,
ain't got people of color issues. We got black issues.
I think that if we, right. I think if people of color and well, first of all, black folk got to get their shit together, which we got our own issues that we need to deal with. But I think that if all of the marginalized groups, and that doesn't always mean race when you talk about marginalized groups,
poor,
but I think if the marginalized groups figured out that there's strength in numbers because there are white people that are part of these marginalized groups.
Yes.
And if you realize that there's strength in numbers, I think that you can change America. But don't nobody want that for real. America wants to be the way America is. And that's why America stays the way America is. That's why
because it's been profitable for a specific element.
If you
So
listen
why
to the
change
words of Malcolm X, James Baldwin, Muhammad Ali, and some of the Dick Gregory, the people who were speaking on these things 50 years ago, how much different is the rhetoric?
It's not much different.
It's not.
It's about the same, as a matter of fact.
Let me get
it's just gotten more bold because nobody's going to come lynch you for it. Or you hope they don't try. They could come in the Second Amendment might flex itself.
Let's see. They'll find their ways.
Exactly.
Let's see. Bessie says, sounds like the current state not wanting kids to learn about critical race theory. Sorry, too much work right now. Shaking my head. Don't tell the real truth. Word. They are sick and looking for their hoods. Well, I'll be damned. You mean to tell me somebody sounds just as wild as us? That's what I'm talking about.
I mean,
one more. Selwyn is checking in. He's saying peace to the family, peace to me. That's my cousin. And then John said, Sam says, John, that's real talk, brother. I'm sorry, Steph. Go ahead and finish your point.
No, you make good points there. And I'll say this, that when the census information came out, I don't think anybody was surprised, for the most part. If you watch politics, if you pay attention, if you have conversations that are outside of politics that include your own critical thinking and research, you already know that that's why Trump ran the way he ran. That because it had impact. And it doesn't matter if you're white and marginalized when you think that what's the most important thing is that we're going to be the minority. If you're poor and white, you're already the minority. You're already a minority. Your skin is just white, but you are a minority amongst white people who represent the median or higher incomes in this country. I'm talking about impoverished. I'm not talking about, okay, you struggling and you paycheck to paycheck.
Got it. Yeah.
So that's one major thing. But they've been smart enough to keep the racial conversations going and to keep race education or understanding of the systemic racism. That's why they're fighting against CRT. Never mind that it wouldn't make it into high schools and elementary schools or anything anyway, but they don't want to have these critical conversations about race because it's the easiest way to divide the people and to keep the people from looking at the government and holding it accountable for its behaviors. The way that the New York Times reported this census information was inflammatory at best. And it fanned the flames of everything we've been hearing for the last 4 years. It was basically like, hey, white people, we're losing, we're dying out, and they're growing. And the fact is, so what? You lost 2 points on 58 or 2 points, and you were 59% of the population. Now you're 57. If that makes you go into a panic, and you are a part of the Caucasian population, you should ask yourself why being 3 to 4 times more represented in our society scares you. Why does it scare you? And I know why we know, or I know what we think. I'm saying they need to really question themselves. Why would it bother you that you had a 2% slip in your population? And mind you, there's still more. They've even said more room for data error that they have to go back and look at. Why are you worried when you're 57% and the next closest people are 18%?
Let's be clear. A good percentage of the people who claim to be Latinos are white. All right, they white. You got Afro Latinos,
white presenting.
Yeah, white presenting.
Yeah.
Right. You got. I mean, come on. What's the dude from Texas? Ted Cruz.
Raphael.
Okay. So now,
I wonder if they call him Rafi.
Listen, here's my thing.
He wanted to see more white. That's why he went away from Raphael. That's real talk.
If he could have dropped Cruz, he would have.
Yep. White people are the minority in the world. We got what 8 billion people in the world. Half of them are Asian. Most of the rest are some kind of black or brown.
Mm-hmm.
White is they're very, very small. They just are very good at
Changing the
destruction and killing.
Changing
So
the
they
narrative.
spread around the globe a little bit here and there, and the little bit of them that's here and there, they just really kill everybody else there, or some kind of control mechanisms with them, with disease and war. And this is why we have, you know, well, this situation like we have it. They really are not, and that's the thing that kills me. Like with sci-fi movies, every time some people come from outer space, they just happen to be white and speak with a British accent, and I don't understand that.
Yeah,
When
David,
they're not even the majority here, but they're always out in space. But
I mean,
this is why
when there's war, the victor tells the story. You don't
Right,
never
yeah.
hear from the lion.
So
Right.
You
so-
always hear from the man.
so now,
he bit me
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. You
So-
know what it is.
right? So now, here's why they scared Steph, right? Francis Cresswell told a story of that. They can't survive unless they are consistently dominating and destroying others. They won't survive in a fair, equal society where everyone's given opportunity to live and experience their life to the best of their ability. White people will cease to exist. I mean,
I want to be in a
on
space
a level
where
of
we're not explaining, because yeah,
right.
black folks, brown folks, we could come up with a million reasons of why, just like they could come up with a million reasons of why they think we do what we do. But I really, really, really am looking forward to the day when somebody picks up the phone and calls in or comments online that is a part of that demographic that can give an actual reasonable explanation. Convince me on why you should be worried about a 2% slip. I already know why black people.
This is why
I know they're worried, but I'm
whether they're
saying I want to
conscious-
get it from them at some point.
you
What
could
what
be
a black
most-
man thinks, what a black woman thinks, yeah, of course. But I want one day, because these things don't resolve themselves. That's all I'm saying.
There's no resolution. There's no resolution for this, because we're not gonna, because it's not in most people's nature to want to hurt other people. Well, white people, they kind of got a thing on that. They kind of like doing it. They get their rocks off hurting and destroying other people. I don't know why. I don't know. Something with the cold. I don't know. Anyway, they know someplace in the backs of their mind that we cannot continue to exist. Survival's the strongest, thing you have in your body. Everything wants to survive. Everything wants to live longer and see another day. And if they don't do things the way that they do things, they're gonna. And this is what the whole census thing was. The New York Times was like, "Hey, white people, we slipping. We gotta get our oppression on, right? Because they coming up. And if they keep coming up, then we ain't gonna be, the next thing you know is gonna be fair. And y'all don't want that, because we can't survive fair."
The only caveat that I'll have with the argument is the individual, because as a black man, I know that all skin folk ain't your kinfolk.
Right.
And so I am not going to endorse casting the aspersion on all white people having a predisposition for that sort of negativity, because I've met plenty that don't fit that mold. Having said that, I remember Chris Rock when he did one of his comedy skits where he talked about being married to a white woman, and he said, when the apocalypse comes, I'll kill her first. There was a joke in that, but there was some realness in that. The realness in that was, you're going to always protect your own first. I dug that, because I would be the same way. I'm always going to protect my own first. Now, you're going to have some people that's going to say that, Marcus J., you wrong for that. You should just deal with people. And I can understand that. I wish that I came up with the kind of peaceful mentality that will cause me to look at all people equally. I wasn't raised that way. You know why I wasn't raised that way? Because America took that from me. Because my entire life, I've seen us, me, men, black men, women, black women, other people of color be treated differently simply because we are not white, And when we have white people that have this conversation here where they talk about how there's no white privilege and pull yourself upon your bootstraps and why you speak this way and you're so negative, Marcus J, you're a racist, which I ain't got no power over you, so I can't be a racist. You want to call me a bigot or a prejudiced person, you can call me that, even though you'd be wrong, but you can't call me a racist because I ain't got no power over you. You got that power to be a racist. And as a black man, I'm fully aware of what racism looks like. Trust me. Having said that, being white is the privilege because you automatically get the benefit of the doubt. It doesn't mean that your life hasn't been hard. It doesn't mean that you haven't dealt with obstacles. It doesn't mean that you haven't been treated unfairly. It doesn't mean any of that. But what it does mean is that the color of your skin has not been one of those detriments. Because I will promise you, all you got to do is look at the history of this country and you can see it. And I'll lay it out for you. In 1619, the first slaves were brought upon let me rephrase that. The first black people were brought upon these shores and made to be slaves. 1619, 402 years ago. It wasn't until the 1860s, 1863 to 65, 63 to be exact, when they were freed. So you're talking about over 150 years almost that it took for these people to be free, meaning you can go where you want to go. You can do what you want to do. You ain't got to call some other grown-ass man massa. 100 years after that, that's how long it took for them to put voting rights and civil rights on the books. So what happened in that 100 years? You had to go through the immediacy behind racism, slavery. That's what Juneteenth that we just made a big deal this year was about. They didn't tell these people for years that they was free. Then you got Reconstruction. You walking around with vagrancy laws. I can't be out here. Why? I ain't got no place to live, but if I'm out here, I go to jail. And then you move it up to looking at a bowl of bubbles, counting them before you allow me to be eligible to vote. You're stealing people off of the street and you lynching them. And then in 1965, you got the voter right bill and the civil rights bill in 66. Now, all of a sudden, 55 years ago, when we officially become free on paper, when you got me to believe that things are fair now, I'm supposed to believe that because we had a black president in 2008 and 9, that things are fair now? My own father in his military uniform had to go in the back of a building and drink from a white water fountain. Somebody that's alive to this day that can tell you the story. One of my Masonic Lodge brothers told me just a few days ago that he had a cross burned on his yard in the house that he lived in since the 60s. He still lives there now. This man's 80 years old and they burned a cross on his yard. And he was able to tell this story from the couch that he was sitting on when he saw it burning. No, not literally the couch 60 years ago or 50 years ago, but you get the point that I'm making. So the people who perpetuated all of that are the people who are fearful of losing that power. My gut tells me is they think that shit's going to get turned around on them. The problem is black folk ain't built that way. We don't do that shit. We just don't. We want to take care of everybody. We want to be friends with everybody. We want everybody to have peace because we know what it feels like. We know what it feels like when we're being discriminated against. We know what it feels like when we get pulled over for bullshit. We know what it feels like when we see them blue lights behind us. We immediately have anxiety knowing we ain't do nothing wrong. We automatically get to talk. We get to talk without realizing we're giving the talk. Ain't nobody call it a talk. It wasn't called a talk when my father sat me down. First time I seen them blue lights, and the first time I had my hands on the hot hood, I was 15 years old. I won't get into the story. Let's just say someone close to me got taken away and I got left on the street. I had to fend for myself at night. Left there by the police who took my guardian away from me that night. I don't know a lot of white folks that can tell them kind of stories, and maybe they can on an individual basis. And I respect that. I'm not casting a broad brush here. But what I'm saying is y'all don't deal with the shit we deal with. You just don't. And the census is telling us that you about to be the minority in a couple of generations. I don't know what that's going to look like. My guess is it ain't going to change that much because you still got the money, and the money gives you the power. And we seen what South Africa looks like. It's mostly black folk there, but the white folk got the power. That's how you had apartheid. So, there's a lot of different tentacles here with this. But I think it's something that needs to be discussed. Ain't no how Steppin Marcus J live from New Den Legacy and that radio. Sam says the art of war is real. He also says real talk, Marcus. And he also says, damn, I found my home. Preach, brother. I appreciate you, Sam. I appreciate you. Ain't no how Steppin Marcus J live from New Den Legacy and that radio. John, take the last point on this before we move on.
Listen, everything you said was real. And I appreciate it. And again, it's not a personal thing. I don't know every white person in the world. I can't say who feels what way and how they do this, that, and other thing. I've known a lot of who I am as a man. I learned from white people who were very influential in my life coming up. That's not what I'm saying. When I say what I say, it's like this. You have to the exceptions prove the rule. If it's greater than 80%, then it's all. That's just how I see it. Because I do not have time for the separation. My life does not afford me the luxury of finding 20% within the 100%, right? I got to just say it's all. Because how you going to pick? That's like saying, listen, if you touch a red line, you die. You live on the blue lines. But of the red lines, 20% of them you can live. Are you gonna walk on the blue? Are you gonna try to find the 20% good red lines? Or are you gonna walk on the blue line? You're gonna walk on the blue line. And that's all it comes down to. And people keep trying to spin it the same way they do with police. Oh, it's just a few bad ones. Oh, it's just a few bad ones. No, the other way. It's just only a few good ones. And that's the problem. And we got to understand that. And if you don't understand that, know that 72 million people voted for Trump. And that's enough to tell you everything you need to know about this country. Because if 72 million people voted for Trump, 70 million of them were white, they were all racist. I don't care what anybody say. You cannot be a person who's not racist and white. And a white person who's not racist could not vote for Trump because he was an obvious racist and it had nothing to do with party lines because he's the furthest thing from a Republican I've ever seen in my life. A good majority of the white folks in the Democratic Party are racist, but they just won't vote Republican and they knew that Trump was a moron. So it lets you understand that the majority of folks in this country, white folks, which is the world, which is a reflection, a microcosm of the world to me, are racist and they jacked up. And they got every right to be. This is America. You could be whatever you want to be. Just leave me alone. Right? But it does and again, the rally cry of the census lets you know that they can't do that. They cannot just leave us alone. All right, we done got kicked, stomped, and to this day, they have to keep the pressure on. They could have gave it up in World War I when we fought brilliantly and valiantly. They could have gave it up. World War II, they could have gave it up. Civil rights, they could have gave it up. 80s, they could have gave it up. 90s, they could have gave Barack Obama, they could have gave it up. But they haven't given it up. They've maintained the knee on the neck. They've maintained it. Why? Because it's a necessity for them. Because the moment we get a fair shot, we're going to come from behind, get even, and then surpass. And once we do that, it's a problem. Because then, they might actually have to compete evenly. And in an even competitive situation, because of their genetics, you're going to get the, what do they call it? The racially ambiguous. That's the new majority, to be honest with you. It's people who they really mixed race. I think that's the term they use, mixed race.
Mixed race, yeah.
Mixed race. That's the majority. Mixed race. Racially ambiguous. But you know what I say? If you ever need to know what somebody is, ask the police. They'll tell you. You think you mixed? Ask the police. They'll tell you.
Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J live from New Den, Legacy Internet Radio. All right, so let's switch speeds like Bruce Lee riding the Fuji on a movie. You got to keep up. You know, you know where I just went. All right, so let's talk about vaccines. There are some employers that are beginning to mandate vaccines. Depending on where you work, you might be required. If you work for some states, if you work for some the federal government, if you're military, there's different levels of having to do it. There is the idea that if you don't do it, you'll have to submit yourself to a lot of testing. The National Football League has decided that they're going to take a stance on vaccines. I'm going to read some of this article that I'm getting from NFL.com. This article is dated from July 22nd, and it says, in part, as the NFL approaches the 2021 season, the league has informed clubs that it would not extend the season to accommodate a COVID-19 outbreak among unvaccinated players that causes a game cancellation. They are reporting the NFL sent a memo to his club stating that if the game cannot be rescheduled during the 18-week schedule due to a COVID-19 outbreak among unvaccinated players, the team with the outbreak will forfeit and be credited with a loss. In addition, players on both teams will not be paid for the lost contest, and the team responsible for the canceled game due to unvaccinated players will cover financial losses and be subject to potential discipline from the commissioner's office. Last year, the NFL bent over backwards to rework the schedule on the fly as outbreaks occurred. 0 games were missed over 17 weeks. In 2021, the NFL plans to play its 272 game slate over 18 weeks. Quote, we do not anticipate adding a 19th week to accommodate games that cannot be rescheduled within the 18 weeks of the regular schedule. This is what the memo said. So there's more here, but I think we've got it appropriately set up. We talked about the National Football League, but it is bigger than that. It's more, this conversation is more about how employers are beginning to try to make it mandatory in various ways for their employees. So I'm gonna throw it to the team. Steph, you up first before we give you the con. I want to say peace to our brother Ray. Our brother Ray is saying peace. Peace to you, Ray. Thank you for rocking with us. We rolling with you, brother. Thank you for rocking with us here on Ain't No Half Steppin' with Marcus J live from New Den, Legacy and then Radio, 804-402-2893. This is a number to dial. Anybody listening, you want to rock with us, we shall roll with you. Steph B, they trying to make it so that you gotta get the shot. You gotta get the shot.
I mean,
You gotta get the
depending
shot.
on what you do for a living,
You gotta get the shot.
I kind of
Gotta
get
get
it.
the shot.
I kind of
Gotta
I
get
understand.
the
Yes,
shot.
I understand.
Got
I
it.
understand. I understand a mandate depending on what you do for a living.
Let's talk about it.
You know, I think if you now me, how I feel about it is, all right, great. If you don't want to be vaccinated, that's okay with me. That's okay with me. I'm okay with self-selection. I'm okay with you risking you. It's until it becomes about the risk to me that I feel like there's a little problem there. Now, if you work in the medical environment, they are likely going to, or in an environment where there is a lot of exposure to people who are easily their health is almost always compromised or is compromised anyway. So like if you're living in and working at a group residential facility or things like that, I just feel like it's okay for the employer to say this is what has to be done. In those regards. Do I see it for regular corporate America? I don't have any engagement with the public or whatever. maybe not so much, but I think there are certain sectors and industries that I could see it being relevant for. I don't understand why a nurse wouldn't want to get it. And is going to work in a hospital with other people. If you're going to be, if you can mitigate it in the space that you work in, why wouldn't you want to? That's all. And would I take a job that wanted to mandate it? I mean, no, but I don't work in those industries, and I can understand it. I also can understand that if people don't want to get vaccinated and there is any kind of outbreak or anything that can be traced to you, that you might be responsible financially. And it's going to be interesting to see how quickly during the time of the active pandemic, when we were at the height of the pandemic, they were basically saying the medical bills associated with it are not yours, right? They were going to mitigate the cost of that and the expenses and what it does to the American public. Insurance is not going to run that way for long. Eventually, the bills that are going to be associated with COVID are going to land in your lap. That provision that it's covered by the government is no longer a thing. So I'm just waiting to see what that does to the population. And again, I'm like, hey, if you don't want to get it, that's fine. I'm okay with you with however you feel you want your life to proceed. I just don't want to be exposed to it. I'm trying to do my best to mitigate it for myself. And I think if I have to go to the hospital and the nurses have mandatory vaccines, it makes me more comfortable. If I have to go to a doctor's office, things like that, it makes me more comfortable. I think you should be the example. And if you're in that space, follow the science.
I can dig it. Ain't no hashtag Marcus J live from New Den Legacy and Radio. Let me get a couple of comments in. See, Ray says passive aggressive. They'll be forcing it next. My bad, passive aggressive. Greg says, so why are people still getting COVID after vaccination come on? I think that there are just people who don't understand how vaccinations work. I mean, there is always the possibility that you're going to have a breakthrough. Yes,
there
That's
are.
not what's happening. The vaccine has zero effect on whether or not you catch it.
Zero.
The point is that it mitigates. The point is that it's just to mitigate how it affects you.
Right, but transmits. And here goes the key.
Well,
right?
hold on. Let me finish. Let me finish the point I was making, and then you can speak. Give me a second. What I was going to say is, people think that when you get vaccinated, that's the end all, and he says that's his point, and Greg says that's his point. He's agreeing with where you were getting ready to go. But I'm going to correct that narrative, because I think people expect that when you get a vaccination, that means that you're never going to get what you've just gotten vaccinated for. And that is not what vaccinations do. They try to help you not get it, but you could get a breakthrough.
And they reduce your chances.
It reduces your chances of getting severely sick.
It doesn't.
And it reduces. Hold on. Let me finish, and then you can have it. It reduces your, because we've done this. He and I, we've been battling about this for a while. So I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna let you have it, and then we're gonna go around. But the vaccination isn't designed to keep you from getting what you're getting vaccinated for. It's to help you not get it, but it's not 100%. You get this shot, you're never gonna get it. You get this shot, the likelihood of you becoming severely ill and dying, to me, is worth getting the shot. It's the same with the flu shot.
Okay.
We've always seen every single year people get a flu shot. How many people do you know who have gotten the flu shot and still got the flu? I know many people who got the flu shot and still got the flu, but you don't see people running around saying, don't get the flu shot. It's a conspiracy against black people, harkening back to the Tuskegee experiment. You sound crazy.
Right.
You sound like you don't know what you're talking about.
Because the PJs had it on there.
You know, it's a whole different thing. Like, if you want to have an issue with the vaccine, have an issue with the vaccine. Don't compare it to Tuskegee, when they was getting people sick on purpose just to watch what happened to you.
Yes.
You sound silly and crazy,
and leaving you untreated.
You untreated. You sound unintelligent and uninformed when you compare this to Tuskegee. There are other things that you want to compare this to that you might not sound as
Here-
crazy,
here-
but this is not the one that you compare it to. And he says that's his point, and Sue says exactly the flu shot. All right, John. you
Okay,
got
so
it.
here we go. We won't compare the disease to Tuskegee, but let's remember it's the same government. So let's forget about, we're not talking about the disease. We're not talking about COVID. We're not talking about the vaccine. We're talking about the people who are controlling it. And
But
the
that's
people
not
who,
what most people are talking about.
that's what I'm talking about. Right?
That's
When
not
I-
even what we're addressing.
Okay, so no, but Marcus is saying, but that's the problem. If we take Tuskegee out of the argument, then people have a tendency to forget the fact that the same U.S. government who are going to force people to take the vaccine without good reason is going to are the same people that got people sick on purpose to watch how they got sick. So let's just keep that in mind when we say we I don't want to throw Tuskegee out because it's important to remember it. We can't forget it. Listen.
I just don't think it is. I don't agree with that.
I don't think
Because
that is relevant to
the reason
this.
is relevant because we're talking about the same government, and the fact that you're saying let's not talk about it is like you trying to say that the government somehow evolved.
No one's
that they're
saying
nice
saying
now
that.
that they won't do
Nobody's
what
saying
they
that.
won't do it.
Nobody's saying
I'm
that.
not saying that they did it this time, but you
Are
saying they
you
won't.
saying they did do it
No,
right now?
no.
Okay, so
I'm not saying that this disease is Tuskegee, but what I'm saying is these are the same people.
I don't trust.
They're the same people
I-
with the needle.
Hard stop. I don't trust the United States government. Pow. That's what you needed to hear. There you go.
Okay, so
I
now
said it. I
we
do
can go
not
past
trust the
that.
United States government. No.
COVID is not Tuskegee. Period. Full stop. Same thing. So we can agree on that. Here's the problem. If you're telling me the NFL said what they said, right? So what happens now when somebody who's vaccinated, there's an outbreak on a team. They do the testing and they found out somebody who's vaccinated had it and gave it to everybody else, and they can't play the game now. Does the same thing apply?
I would say yes.
Of course, but they are going to say no.
Well,
And now we're going to get
you
it. Now
can't
we're
say
gonna,
that. It hasn't happened.
You know
yet.
why I can say it? Because it ain't in the paper. It's not in the paper. And I'm not that smart. I'm not the only one who thought of it. It's not in the paper for a reason. The same reason if you get sick and die, like 6,000 people have from getting the vaccination
Out of
directly.
Out of million.
It don't matter how
Yes,
to.
it does.
You know, but
Yes, it
you're the same
does. Of
person who
course it
told me it
matters.
didn't matter who died from the vaccine and who got shot in the head. One death was one death too many.
Yeah, of course, one death is one death
so
too
it's
many.
the same
But-
thing
but
on
if-
the other. Listen,
but if you
you
talking-
can't have it one way and not both ways.
Well,
Marcus.
you can when you're talking about less than 1%.
But that's less than 1% of people who got the disease died from it.
Yeah, but what about
Yeah.
what about the over 99% that have had no issues?
Same thing with what about the over 99% who got the disease with asymptomatic? Right? We're gonna lay down and cry, right, about the disease that kills less than 2%, right? But then 6,000 people died just from getting it. And that's an acceptable loss of getting the vaccine. 6,000 people is an acceptable loss. So no, we can't have it both ways. What I'm saying to this whole thing is we have to stop with the bullshit, right? The vaccine can save your life. You might get sick and you might die. It's a small percentage, but if you want to take the risk, that should be your business, right? But get it to save your life. It's not going to stop you from getting it or giving it to somebody else, but it will stop you from getting sick. That's what it does. And wonderful. It's a great thing that does that. I'm happy for it, right? But that's not what they're selling people, right? They're selling people a line of bullshit, and I still don't know why. Because it doesn't make any sense. If anything, it's making things worse because you're giving people a false sense of security. They're running out here without masks. They're not practicing social distancing. They're gathering in too large a number
And some of that
because
was
they
being
got a
done-
shot. Because they got a shot and they think they Superman now, and they're spreading it more. So you gotta be very careful of how you treat people and the things you say to people and the way people react to things.
I think I feel the same way about those who consistently speak from a position that is more conspiracy oriented than science.
I'm not
And
talking
so
conspiracy.
I'm speaking to them too, because that's why we end up having these long drawn out conversations about whether the COVID vaccine is relevant, viable, needs to be taken, is because we spent so many months
Right.
talking conspiracy.
And to hell with the
and-
conspiracy people too.
but
But
however,
hold
let me
on, hold on,
finish.
hold on.
However, it's the same thing. It's we want to be upset because we're like, it's bullshit. You got to be careful what you're telling people. The reason so many explanations, it's kind of like this. You don't believe it when we say this, you come up with a conspiracy theory. And this is if I'm sitting back and I'm educating people. And then I'm like, okay, well, let me try to explain it to you this way. And you come up with a conspiracy theory for that. And then we go back and forth, and I have to do this 15 times, give you 15 anecdotes, narratives, and validations for why this makes sense, because you keep coming up with some kind of conspiracy, woulda, shoulda, coulda, how did this happen? How did it not? The problem is early on, everyone was very behind the conversations of, or were very engaged in the conversations of, it doesn't do this, it does do that. And nobody had enough education. And science is the reason that a lot of people don't believe science is because they also don't understand the process of evolution. And evolution isn't just something that happens to the human body. Science evolves as well. So yes, months ago, they're saying X and O. They watch the process. You go back, you have data. That's why you track it. And then boom, hey, we figured this out. Every single thing that we have, every single disease that's been, that there has been a created insulin, whether it's for diabetes or a created for flu B, a vaccine. Every single one of those have gone through evolutionary phases of where, okay, we thought this, we did some more tests, we had this, we've seen these things pop up and for some reason with COVID very specifically, people have glommed onto more of the conspiracy elements of it than anything else.
I know why.
And it creates the same kind of bullshit you think that the government creates. The people create problems as much as the government creates. Do we have to believe everything the government says? No. Do we believe that the government is without fault? No. But I believe that you can say, I don't necessarily trust the government, but I trust science. And for me, if that science says I need to keep wearing my mask, I need to be careful of who I'm around and what I'm doing, I'm okay with that too. But we can't even get to a point of, it's not even about people who are vaccinated going out and giving the vaccine. We can't even get to a point of people not comparing a mask to the Holocaust, to segregation, to all of these different things. The problem with COVID has been as much on the backs of the people as it has been on the government. The government response was one thing. Human behavior is a whole other element, and we can't fight both of them. Both of them are fully steeped in parts of the culture that you're not going to be able to touch.
Can you remember a time on the show when I didn't say that people are stupid?
No, I cannot.
Okay, so people are stupid, and we understand that. Guess who else understands it? The government, who gives them the information to go with. Had they qualified their statements, right?
For stupid people who may not understand it anyway?
No, listen, whether they understand it or not, you give ammunition to the people who prop the idiots up to give them talking points when you give multiple definitions and conversations and you say things that aren't true. You just lie about stuff for no reason. When you post,
everything we don't agree with is not a lie. Also,
no, I
want that to be kind of clear.
You say you believe you trust science, right? I trust science too. I know that jet fuel doesn't burn hot enough to melt metal in the World Trade Center, but somehow it magically did. Nobody ever spoke to that. Never will.
Tons of people have had that conversation.
But listen,
listen,
the people have had the conversation, but the question's never been answered, right? Just like there are questions regarding COVID that will never be answered. And when you have that situation, when you refuse to answer simple questions, when you refuse to discuss, okay, if you're going to give the vaccine and so on and so forth, and somebody asks, Well, how do you feel about the 6,000 people who died when they got infected? Speak to it. Don't push it away. Don't call it conspiracy. Don't say it's QAnon. Address it. Say, listen, with any vaccine, any kind of sign, people are gonna die. Right? It happens. These people had some pre-existing condition. We pulled the Johnson and Johnson off the thing because some people got blood clots. We found out that that was an exclusive, very small number, and we put it back out.
I heard people actually say that. I watched C-SPAN. I heard people actually say that and explain that. Scientists.
Right. This has to be, you hear scientists explain it, but we have to lead the narrative with the people who are in charge of giving the information to the people. This is what the president has to say. This is what the vice president has to say. Not getting the vaccine makes you more holy, brings you closer to God. That's not what you say. That's not what you say. You just don't. You tell people what it is and you let them make their decision. Right? This thing is going to help you live longer. If you get the disease, you're not going to get sick.
Here's the thing.
Real simple.
Here's the thing. Let me get a couple of comments. It's not.
Because if it was that simple, it would have. There was.
Why is it not that simple?
All right, let me stop us. Greg says just scare people and they will follow each other off the cliff. Sue says some of these vaccinated folks are tripping, thinking they're invincible. Hakeem says homegirl is dope. She's always dropping it. I think he's talking about you, our sister Steph. So, and I agree with you, Hakeem. She is dope.
I appreciate you.
Absolutely. I think that when we see this narrative that's coming through, you know, it's never going to be the narrative that we want. And I'm not just talking about the vaccines. I'm not just talking about COVID. I'm just talking about living in America where they lie to us every fucking day. Okay? We know it. This is where we use common sense. Some of us have it, some of us don't. Common sense says we have an airborne disease that we have seen transmits based upon being around infected people. So the more you're around large groups of people without being protected, the more likely you are to get it.
Right.
So put a damn mask on. If you get the shot, doesn't mean that you get to move like you are the only person in the room with superpowers. You ain't got no damn superpowers. You just happen to have a little bit of armor on. But we know that after that armor is battered and battered and battered, eventually it's going to fail. Hence the breakthroughs. This shit ain't hard, yo. Like, we need the government to give us the skinny on what's going on and keep it funky. Like, we know all of that. Like, we want them to keep it funky. They'll never keep it funky. This is where you got to have common sense. And why are we walking around like we ain't got no common sense? We got common sense. We expect the government to tell us the truth? For real? We really expect the government to tell us the truth. This is where you use the power of deduction and you look at what's going on and you move prudently. Why is this hard? Why is it hard to put a mask on when you're around groups of people? You think because you got a damn shot that you don't get to put a mask on, now all of a sudden you don't have to wear a mask? And here's the other thing. Science. Dealing with a novel disease. Novel. That means the shit is new. It also means that they learning as they go. Common sense doesn't change. Common sense ain't novel. You've always needed to wear a mask when you're going in places where you don't know who's there. When you're going in places where there are large groups. You've always needed to wear a mask. So why is this different? Why is this hard? You think because you got a shot now that you got superpowers? You had no superpowers when you got the flu after getting that shot. So it's hard. It's hard for me because I'm not stupid. And I'm a trained journalist. I don't always say that, but this is a time where I'm going to say this. I'm a trained journalist. I didn't just get to come here off the scrap heap. I know what the fuck I'm talking about, right? And I also know that the news is given to you on a 5th grade level. Why? Because most of the people are stupid. Most 30-year-olds read on a 5th grade level. That's why they speak to you in plain language on the news. That's why. Common sense. It's not common. It should be, but it's not. They dumbing it all down for you. That's why you got Marcus J here to tell you, put your mask on. If you choose to get the shot, get the shot. But what did I lead with? Put your mask on. Quit breathing on people. Get away from people. Don't kiss nobody you ain't supposed to be kissing. Dap up folks with the elbow or fist bump. Wash your hands.
Really?
Basic stuff. This is not hard. Why? Because the government is going to lie to you. They always do it. They've always done it. And they're going to continue to do it. If you don't know what they're saying to you is a lie, use your common sense. You know people that have died. You see people who have said, I should have got the shot. Now I'm sick. And those people die very soon after saying that. This is not hard. It's also not hard when you know that people have been given vaccines for other things in the past. And sometimes it don't work out. Your body chemistry don't work out with the vaccine. You get sick. Sometimes you die. That's never a good thing. And I'm not suggesting that it is. But when you look at the percentage of people who get the vaccine, not just with COVID, but just with anything, military people getting something like 15 or something mandatory vaccines prior to COVID that they're about to add next month. So now it's going to be 16. So what about them other 15? Ain't nobody said shit. They just went in there and took the shot. But they're going to have to ask a whole bunch of questions now because it's COVID. This is not hard. This is common sense. We can all agree, well, most of us with common sense can agree that COVID is real and people are getting sick and people are dying. And we've also seen that people who have gotten a shot are less likely to get really sick and really die. Why is this hard? Because common sense is not very common because they give the news to you on a 5th grade level because most of us are stupid. Ain't no how Steppin Marcus J, live from New Den, Legacy, Internet Radio. If you feel offended, it's probably because you're stupid. Let's see. Yes, common sense and comprehension. Yes, that's our brother Greg. Sam says, I think Steph is right, man. It's like hurting freaking
Herding cats.
I think Steph is herding cats. Yes. Let's see. Yes, they stupid, sad, but true. I love this show, and yes, I appreciate that, Greg. Thank you. Sue says, and don't pull your mask down when you sneeze. I hate that. Why are these people pulling their mask down when they sneeze or cough? Leave that mess inside the mask and embrace your own nasty ass. I don't want to embrace your nasty ass. Keep your nasty ass to your ass, man. And Bessie is agreeing. That's right, Sue. She's right. She's agreeing. Greg says, what about long-term effects? Fair question. Very fair question. We don't have.
I want to address that.
We don't have any data on long-term effects. The short-term effect is the people who are getting it, for the most part, haven't gotten the shot, and those of us who are getting sick after having gotten the shot are less likely to die. Numbers bear that out. John, you got the con.
I had a hour-long conversation regarding this with my personal physician. She's a brilliant woman, brilliant Black woman. And she said what people are experiencing with COVID is they're getting a behind the scenes look at science and the way it works, right? Like you said, evolution. For a year, we didn't know what we didn't know.
Right.
We still don't know what we don't know.
True.
But here's what we do know, right? I've never been a person to try to minimize COVID as a disease, right? Or its effect on people. I just know, right, in my gut that I am not smarter than the people in charge of disseminating this information to people to save their lives and to make this thing be as minimally negatively effective on the American people. If they're putting it out there the way that they're putting it out there, they're doing it on purpose, and they're messing people's lives up. They're messing people's lives up by not telling the real simple truth. COVID is bad. The reason COVID is bad is because it has an 85% infection rate.
They've said that.
Right? No, but this is why it's bad, right? The infection rate is 85%, right? But of the 85% of people who get infected, over 90% will be asymptomatic. That's the vast majority. A few will get sick. Even fewer will get very sick to go into the hospital. And most of the people who get sick enough to go in the hospital have had pre-existing conditions, upper respiratory, diabetes, overweight, elderly, so on and so forth. That is the majority of the people who this disease will kill, right? They turned it into a rock star. They branded it and they made it into something, and it's like Freddy Krueger and Jason. They made it a star. And if they didn't oversell it the way they did, right, they would have got people because listen, the nut jobs are going to be the nut jobs regardless. But you get stupid people piling on to the nut job pile when you give out all of this super hype about this disease, right? It was super hype. Cuomo bought out the Javits Center to put beds in it when he had 20 hospitals empty in the city with beds that he could have reopened, but that wouldn't have made headlines, right? Why did they call people who was diagnosed after they died a COVID death? The reason why? Because the hospital was given money to do so.
This is exactly why we're still having the issues we have now with people questioning things, looking at things a certain way. This is it.
No,
this is exactly so to minimize it by saying
no.
Hey,
but say that. To see this is the problem.
No.
If you and this is what I'm saying. What you're saying is at this point, if you don't, it's all right not to tell the whole truth.
That's not what I'm saying.
Well, then there should be a column.
That's not what I'm saying.
When they go on the news and say that they say the words COVID has killed X million people or X 100,000 people, and that's not true. COVID killed this many.
Hold on,
this many died.
Let her address
having been diagnosed with COVID that didn't kill them. But
so,
because they won't separate the numbers, they give fire to people on the nut job side to bring other people in on them. No, I'm not a part of that. But what I'm saying is, if you don't do that, if you don't be very critical and clear in what you are saying, you open up Pandora's box.
And
Stop. No, let him go. I have nothing. I have plenty, but I have nothing.
Okay.
But that's the whole point of what I'm trying to say. If you're not very specific and itemize this thing and break it down to where it really is and not inflame it and use inflaming language and stuff, and then when somebody comes to ask you a question, you go, "Oh, shut up and be quiet," or "Oh no, we're not going to talk about that," or "You're a nut job." No, you don't do that. You answer the question, but here's the problem: once you answer the question, somebody's going to ask you, "Well, why did you say that then?" And nobody's ever going to say why.
Again, I come back to the point that I made on common sense. And while I hear you and I see your passion in your argument, I think the fact that we see people dying when they weren't dying before is the bigger issue.
That's nothing to do with what I just said.
I know it
has nothing to do with what I said.
No, it does in the sense that
how?
Well, you're speaking of the messaging. That's always been your position. Your position has always been the messaging. And
yes.
I respect and I understand that. But I think sometimes in making the point about the messaging, it comes off as minimizing what's actually going on. And you're going to disagree with that, and that's fine that you disagree with that. But I'm telling you how it comes off.
So the opposite,
and you
I will accept that if you tell me that the opposite is true. Overplaying it is just as bad.
But hold on. So when the government, and I'll just say Fauci as a representative of the government, was giving as much information as he can, it didn't take them moving the ball to get conspiracy theories, to get naysayers, to get and I'll say this as somebody who creates messaging for businesses in a sales capacity. So I know how to sell things. I can sell anything. What I do know is if someone wants to believe that this thing I created is not going to work for them and that it comes from something and it's got a million caveats attached to it, it doesn't matter how I sell it. It doesn't matter at all. If telling people this is something that's spreading rapidly, which is what they came out and said right away, they said every person is going now with the Delta variant. They've said every person who gets it can give it up to 5 people. It can easily, and I will tell you right now, I know a household right now that has 5+ people, and at least 5 people in that household have it from one person. So they tell you that. They told you that with Delta variant. With the COVID variant, the original 19, they said one person will give it to 2 people. People ignored that. And this was early on. They didn't have enough to sell it other than this can kill you. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. And my point is the messaging is not the reason people are not getting vaccinated. It is the norm of the culture of America to one, have a bunch of people, especially since we have platforms and everything else, have a bunch of people who always think they know better than the experts. 2, think they can tell the experts, if you say it to me this way, I'll receive it. And that's bullshit. That's bullshit. We have just seen it doesn't matter how it's presented. If someone wants to believe that it doesn't make sense, that it's not for them, so on and so forth, they were doing this from the very beginning. There were people like that from the very beginning. It has zero to do with messaging. The initial concern about the messaging was, well, they're not telling us enough. They didn't know enough. All they knew was this is killing people and it's running through this space and we got to do something about it. Then it was, hey, we have some vaccines. We're pushing them through. We're making the data available to everybody in the world, whereas typically one grouping of people are working on a vaccine or data because it's going to make them a ton of money. In this case, we put it out and we're saying, wherever you are in the far reaches of the world, go ahead and research this thing. We got to get it to market as soon as possible. The more people that are working on it, maybe if they did this with cancer, if anybody out there knows what's going on with the human genome and how it's impacted by cancer and they shared it with more people, we might be in cure space and not vaccine space. But the fact of the matter is, there is always going to be a contingency, especially in a country where free speech and opinions rate, much more highly than it should sometimes, because some people shouldn't be able to speak. You think some people shouldn't be able to vote? I think some people's voices shouldn't be heard because all it does is convolute issues that weren't initially convoluted. And I'm not referencing you, but what I'm saying is, this was put out there at a very baseline level for the people you call stupid, which is the American public. You say it all the time. People are stupid. Americans are stupid. This was put out there in a 5th grade level. I can tell a 5th grader this kills. And by the way, not only does it kill, you can give it to somebody. And every 2 people you encounter, 2 out of 5 people you encounter, you're going to pass it to. That to me should have been the baseline of understanding. And that was set up front. I can't combat. And if I'm the person selling the message, it's not my job to spend my time combating the people who then you just naturally don't believe anything the government says, doesn't trust the government. You're going to come up with these conspiracies. For months, even on this show, it's been more about the conspiracies than about the cure. That has zero to do, in my opinion, with how the government's presenting it. That was happening in the very beginning. I don't give a damn where COVID originated. I want it gone. I don't want to talk about a monkey, a bat, a rat, a cat. I don't care. I want it gone. Therefore, I'm like, y'all can figure out and point fingers, but what I'm going to do is take care of me and my house. As for me and my house, we shall wear this mask and we shall get this vaccine and we shall do the things that we need to do. I just don't think that the easy diagnosis is they didn't tell us the whole story, which who knows the whole story even now. This is the problem. And that's why people are doing what they're doing. No, people are doing what they're doing because that is the nature of the American public. The more information we have, as undereducated as many people are, the more they think they know. And that's been the bigger issue with it. That's been the bigger issue with it. Now, all of a sudden, everybody thinks they understand vaccines and everything else. Weren't reading about them before COVID. Now you know everything. You know what would cure this space? If you are not a scientific professional with credentials, have no opinion other than the one about your own body. Period.
That I 100% agree on. Greg says my son had tested positive for COVID. He took vitamins for 3 days. He tested negative. He tested a few times again negative. That's his experience. Let's see. A couple more comments in. Ray says, here's a fair conspiracy. COVID is a fear and distraction to rob the future generation economically. I have no problem using precautions. He says terrorists went on vacation. Now they're back. We in constant state of fear. There's nothing new there. Bessie says, Steph, as far as me and my house, we will wear a mask. Hakeem has a question for you. John, he says, how does he know the real numbers? Can we see his sources, please? So please respond. Final comment on this topic. We do have other stuff to move on to.
The numbers are what have the numbers that people who have died because they had adverse reaction to the vaccine that they received, which is not. I would not blame the vaccine for it. It's going to happen. Everybody can't take everything, and they didn't know how it was going to react with some people who have some kind of conditions, and it happens. It's a tragedy, and it's sad, but it's something that should be addressed, and I believe it should be addressed with the same attention that other parts of this vaccine and treatment get, and it isn't being done. As far as the people who died, it has been said multiple times from officials from every department concerned with this that a COVID death shall include anyone who tests positive, right, for the COVID virus at the time of their death. It does not mean in any way that the COVID virus specifically killed that person. What I was discussing earlier was when it's announced on the various news programs and through elected officials and people who were meant to tell us about it, they say COVID has killed X number, whatever that number is. I don't know what it is right now, but whatever it is, COVID has killed X number of people in America, around the world, wherever it is. And when they say that, they are purposely lying to create a fear in people, right? Because all they'd have to do is say this many people have died, and when they would die, they tested positive. This many people got sick, and died because they got the disease. They can separate the numbers, but they're not even taking count. They're just taking all the numbers and lumping them together. And scientifically, right, if we're going to deal with the science, that's something very important to know. But no one seems to want to know that true number. And there has to be a reason behind that. Why wouldn't you want to know how many people just died and had it, but it didn't kill them versus who it really killed and how it affected them? That's something that real medical scientists want to know, but they don't want to know, and they don't want you to know. And if you ask about it, all of a sudden you got tinfoil on your head and you're a flat earther. But it's a reasonable question, and it should have a reasonable answer, right? You can't in these things. I understand that people You can't get all into genetics and science and all this stuff and how small. Most people don't understand how small a virus is. But some people who do know how small a virus is are the people who have people not wanting to wear masks. Because guess what? They really don't have masks and mass productions that can capture a virus in any level, right? What the mask will do, right, will catch some other things that the virus is riding on and stop that from getting to you, right? So that's what the mask does. It doesn't stop the virus. The virus is too small, right? But the virus will ride on a little piece of spit or a piece of dust or something like that, and that'll hit the mask, and it won't go through because it's sitting on the dust or the spit or whatever that hit the outside of the mask. So that's what it's doing. That's how it's protecting you. But guess what's better than that? The mask added with the social distancing, the 6 feet. Make it 7. Protect yourself. This is common sense, what Marcus is talking about. But again, they're trying to hard sell with the fear mongering, messing with the people. For what reason, I still don't know, because it don't make sense. Why would they say, I'm going to come knock on your door, ask you if you got vaccinated, and if not, I'm going to put you in a car, drive you to the place, give you the vaccine, and $200 to save my life? You don't know me. So it's something in the game. Nobody wants to address it. Nobody wants to talk about it, right? We spent $6 trillion on this disease. We could have cured world hunger for the next 100 years with $6 trillion. More people starved to death than died from COVID. But we don't want to cure hunger. Black woman last year cured cancer. But we don't want to put $500,000 into her research. They just sidetracked it. Oh, you cured it. Good. Get over here and let's not talk about it no more. Right? So it's all I'm saying is shit in the game.
It's shit in the game, but there's shit in every game, which is why I come back to common sense. And you know, I like Hakeem said, I still want to see your research. You say Google it, but I want to know I want to know what you looked at.
I looked at Google
and show me what you looked at.
I looked at Google.
Yeah, that doesn't fly with me. Everybody can look at Google.
Okay.
You know, on Google, this is where I found what I said. And I've asked you the same question. That was the answer that you gave me. And he asked the question. I mean, I think it's a fair question. But at the end of the day, I'm always going to come back to common sense. And you spoke of that in what you were saying with regards to how you should move. And at the end of the day, we can all see that you got a disease. This disease is deadly, but it's not different in the sense of how you should be handling yourself. If you choose to get the vaccination, get the vaccination. If you choose not to get the vaccination, put a mask on, stay away from people. This stuff shouldn't be hard, but it's made to be hard because naturally Americans do not like to be told what to do. So when you start telling people what to do, you're going to have a section of the people that's going to be defiant no matter what the situation is. And that is a problem. Ain't no hashtag with Marcus J. Live from New Dan Legacy and that radio. Last comment on this topic is from Hakeem, who says, for the lady several years ago, I believe they were letting parts of the genome be patent. I think that hinders a lot of progress. I know patents. Hold on. Another comment came in and threw me off here. I'm sorry. I think that hinders the progress. I know patents were being challenged legally, so I don't know where the issue stands right now. Sorry about that, Hakeem. I got your full comment in. Bessie says, people only take time to read headlines of the story. It takes too much to research, talk it through, and move from there. It's easier to just follow the bold print headline. They do more to research that cost and location of the latest Jordan's purse, etc., but won't do the same when it comes to something like this. So I agree. And Ray says facts. So good comments, John. Good comments, Steph. Good comment. We moving on. Ain't no hashtag Marcus J. Live from New Dan Legacy and that radio. All right. So this documentary that I watched on Netflix that talked about the November 2004 Malice in the Palace. And the Malice in the Palace was the fight that took place between the Indiana Pacers and the National Basketball Association and the defending world champion Detroit Pistons, also of the National Basketball Association, in the Palace in Auburn Hills in Detroit, Michigan. And many of us saw it. Virginia Union University alumni Ben Wallace was fouled very aggressively towards the end of the game that the Indiana Pacers say again.
Very aggressively.
Yeah, I saw the foul. It was a
It
hard
wasn't.
foul. It was a hard foul. It was a hard foul. You saw the doc just like I did.
Twice.
And
I
in the
watched it
doc,
twice this
and in the
morning.
doc, dummy told the wrong person you need to foul somebody.
He said you
and
can
then-
get your foul now.
And then when he fouled him, it was an aggressive foul. It just was. But Ben responded probably more aggressively than the foul would suggest. Yes, warranted. Those were the things that you saw in that we see in basketball games all the time. Where it got weird is Ron Artest is laid out on the scorer's table like he's on his therapist's couch, which he mentions in the documentary. Where it gets really weird is a fan threw a beer bottle or whatever it was, and it struck him near his face. Ron Artest snaps, he runs into the crowd, the brawl, or should we say the malice in the palace is on. Now, here's why I wanted to talk about this, and I'm glad, Steph, you suggested it, and John, I'm glad you watched it. I watched the doc today. This was the first time that I've seen this story told from the perspective of the players. I've always seen this story told from the perspective of the media, from the perspective of the NBA, from the perspective of the fans, but never from the perspective of the players. And, you know, you got 15 dudes from Indiana in the middle of Detroit, and it looks like everybody is against them. And if you watch the tape, like many of us, I mean, shit, I saw it when it was happening. I remember this. I didn't have to watch the documentary to know about the malice in the palace. You know, like this was some scary stuff. But here's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about how these guys were portrayed. They talked in this documentary about how they got tattoos and they called them thugs and all this kind of stuff when nothing happened on the court prior to someone in the stands, a fan, throwing something and striking a player. That's where it got weird. You heard players in this documentary, and if you're a fan of the National Basketball Association like I have been for the last 40 years, you know it's going to be some shit on the court. It's going to be some, you know, some elbows thrown and some raised blood pressure and some tempers flared. All that stuff's normal. You know, the foul on Ben, while it was hard, it wasn't anything that was different than what we've seen before. And getting in between the players and pushing them away. And I think one of the guys said, ain't nobody wanting to fight for real. You just out there posturing. Where it got weird was a fan. A fan. Now, here's where it's going to get difficult in this room because there's some disagreement on the next piece of what I'm going to share. When Commissioner David Stern, 2 days later, issued the suspensions, Ron Artest was suspended for the rest of the season. I got no problem with that. Steven Jackson was suspended for 30 games. I think he should have got the season like Ron got. And Jermaine O'Neal got 25 games. I think that's about right. I don't remember what Ben got, but Ben got suspended as well. You cannot go into the stands. I think any player that goes into the stands to do what Ron Artest and Steven Jackson did, I think they get the season. If it's game 1 of 82, I think you get suspended for 81 games. If it's game 81 of 82, I think you get suspended for 1 game. But you can't play the rest of the season. You go in the stands and you fight. To that, you say what, Steph? You saw the documentary just like I did. You remember when this happened. You saw it play out. You're a fan of the sport. What say you?
Ben Wallace was suspended for 6 games. 6 games.
I think that's probably about right.
$400,000
Because you can
lost.
argue that he was throwing
really
stuff.
didn't
He was throwing his wristbands.
He wasn't the aggressor as
Wasn't
it
the
relates
aggressor.
to
No.
and more of his aggression was driven toward the other athletes, which is expected. I didn't agree with how long the suspensions were for. I think the person I felt the worst for was O'Neal. He did get the short end of the stick. He is the one whose career was ultimately sidelined. I mean, I never, while I saw when this happened, I think all of us were around for that, saw the game, saw what was going on. I playoffs in the 90s and 80s, there was nothing like them, right? And you already had that bad boy image for Detroit. You already knew who Ron Artest was, and what Jackson brought to the table, who, by the way, striking resemblance to George Floyd.
And they were friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Striking resemblance. But what I thought was, it was overkill. When I saw now, initially when it all happened, I was like, well, I mean, you can't run up in the stands and but I just want to understand why we think these human beings that are doing their job, why we think that buying a ticket gives us a right to scream at them, throw things at them. Why do we think that ends their humanity and whatever reaction we're going to get? I can only control one thing. I can control what I do. What you do in response to that, I have no control over, and I should expect that I don't have any control over it. I felt that when the fans were throwing things at them, when throwing, condiments and popcorn and water and everything else on them, through a chair. There was a felonious. There was somebody pressed felony charge. He got felony charges pressed against him. I just felt like, if I'm gonna attack a grown man, no matter what the situation is, no matter where he is, I'm testing his humanity. I may get what I asked for. And then the entire representation with David Stern, the entire representation in the media was these high-paid thugs. Bob Costas even said there's even people with felonies. There's not a bunch of felonious people in the NBA, but immediately you see a black man react to a situation, and now all of a sudden it's thugs, and they're the bad boys and everything else. No, throw something at the average person and you're likely going to get a reaction. Now, can you do that at work? Not without repercussion. I just felt, when you see the video and you see all the angles and you process it, which tells me that David Stern, because he immediately made these judgments, these calls came down pretty quickly. You didn't consider all of the scenario. I did not feel Ron Artest needed a full season for that.
I just disagree with that. I think that as the players, you have a greater responsibility, just like I believe the police have a greater responsibility than the civilians, because you know better. I think that
fans know better. These are adult people.
Fans know better. I can dig it. But as the players, it's just never going to be okay with me that you run into the stands, because once you do that, all control is lost.
I don't disagree with that.
All control is lost, and a lot of really bad things can happen, as we saw that day.
And I felt like Steven Jackson, he lived in that space.
Oh yeah, and
he was about it, and he was like, "Let's kick it up a notch."
While I think that he should have got the exact same time
he
that Ron
Artest
got, I think that if you listen to Steven Jackson, not so much
he
the words
make
he
you
said,
feel
but the energy that he gave off, he was like, "Yo," and see, while I think he should have got the same time, I love this man for how he came
was like,
off.
"Yo, I ride with my family."
He rode with his boy. His boy needed to be protected. Even though his boy was wrong, he was right there with him. And as a man, I can understand that. I can dig that. You right there with your boy. We call that ride or die. We pay homage. We pay homage to people who do what Steven Jackson did.
You really feel like, and I'm gonna back off so John can get in, but you really feel like Ron Artest should have been like, "All right, I'm good."
I think that Ron Artest should have controlled himself and not run into the stands and let security deal with what just happened.
Okay.
I think him running in the stand completely changed the narrative.
It changed
you know
the
what
narrative.
it is? You know
I
what you know
don't
you know what you know what
disagree.
it is, John? I'm gonna tell you, you know what it is? As we're all sports fans, we'll move to football here for a second because we're getting ready to move in football season. And we know that if someone does something to you, knocks you down, and walks off, when you get up and you push them and the ref sees you, you getting the flag. 15 yards. You just hurt your team. You didn't do nothing wrong. You just retaliated to the other dude. He started it, but you got the 15-yarder. And now your team is looking at you like, yo, you watched the doc. And on the doc, Ron Artest says to his teammate, Jermaine O'Neal, you think we're going to get in trouble? He
Yeah,
should have
he
got his
did.
ass beat for that. And apparently he almost did.
Yeah. O'Neal almost came
He
at
tried to
him.
kill this dude. Ron Artest.
I don't think
Steven
Artest
Jackson.
processes things that way.
He just doesn't, not like we do. Ron Artest and Steven Jackson went to other teams and won chips. Jermaine O'Neal's career was destroyed because of what happened. He gets to be mad.
Reggie Miller lost his opportunity.
He retired.
He retired 5 months later.
So all of this, you know who should have suffered for this more than anybody else? The team owners in the league. Because again, listen, I was already a grown man with a family, my children, and how when this thing happened, right? So I have been watching the league deteriorate for years because they were willing to make a sacrifice for what they were calling entertainment, for the quality of the game, right? And for the character of the people that they hired to play the game. They were willing to allow people to do things that other companies would not allow people to do. Right? At the end of the day, this is a company. Listen, people, Allen Iverson, one of the greatest players, he's in probably the top 50 players ever played the game, right? Couldn't get a job not working for me. Couldn't get a job working for me. Something wrong with him. He has a mental disorder. And if you're a multi-millionaire, billionaire person, and you don't know that Allen Iverson has a mental disorder, right? And you shouldn't put him in a position to destroy your brand, then yeah, whatever happens, happens. But that type of mentality comes on. Who was it? Somebody brought a gun to a game one time, right? Well, that was a thing, right?
Gilbert Arenas.
Yeah. Arenas, yes.
Right? So I'm saying when you start listen, when your employee who's a grown man gets his hair done at the same place his daughter does, right? When he has visible tattoos with profanity on it up his neck, right? And he sits and represents your brand and you allow it, you get whatever you get. Right? Ron Artest, another one, got mental issues. And they knew that when they put him on the court. Jermaine O'Neal was a child.
Yeah, he was 19.
And they put this
20.
child with a nut.
Two.
With two nuts. And what did you get?
If you're gonna call him,
and then
I don't know. I don't agree with the.
Wait, and then hold on. Wait, let me
Yeah,
finish.
yeah.
Let me finish. And then you take this soup that you're making, right?
So
and
you're referring to what the owner was saying about why he hired them.
I know, but
Donnie Walsh.
It goes past
He's
Donnie.
agreeing with Donnie Walsh.
I'm agreeing with him on a level, but I'm not going to minimize what happened because it didn't just happen there. It just that's where it came to a explosive end, right? Yeah, you should have thought about a dress code a long time ago. Code of conduct, character. You should send these kids someplace to tell them that to the they used to have this thing in the music industry when you signed a new artist, they had to go to etiquette, right? Mm-hmm. They had to go to etiquette training, right? So that they knew how to speak to the reporters. The kids should, the players should go, this is how you answer this question. This is how you say, well, I'm going to ask you the question, answer it. Let them give their answer and then say, okay, this is how you want to say this when you're talking to a reporter. because you're representing the team. You're representing the state, the city, whatever it is. And this is how we want it. We don't want to take on a negative connotation or we don't want to give anyone else ammunition. Now we turn around and we got to hear Bob Costas and these other people talk about thugs. And it's not about thugs. It's about insufficient training, right? And it's about people making decisions about money and not thinking about the effect that it's going to have on people's lives. Then you give these kids all the money on top of that with no kind of financial training. All this stuff comes along. These people have like emotional and mental issues. And I say nuts, and that's wrong for me to say that because that's an easy term, but they have emotional trauma, right? And they have mental issues like most 90% of the people do. And talking about black people from poor places in America. And you in one day they go from poor to millionaires, and you put them in a very controlled environment with a bunch of drunk people. You've been selling liquor all night. Your team is losing. You got 2 police officers in the whole damn stadium. What do you expect to happen?
I in the interest of time, I'm gonna stop you there. I'm gonna make the final comment on this, and then we're gonna move towards the end of the show. Our last topic, we just unfortunately
it was right. The suspensions, and I agree with you. They should have got that.
The unfortunate thing is we won't get to our final topic. Hopefully, we'll move it to next week. But I just don't agree with you, man. You took responsibility away from where it belongs and tried to put it with other people. And here's what
spread it. They got what they deserve. They should be responsible. But the other people are too.
Let me finish. We got to stop cutting each other off. Let me finish. Ron Artest ran into the stands. Donnie Walsh didn't do that. David Stern didn't do that. Larry Bird didn't do that. Rick Carlisle didn't do that. Ron Artest did it. I also know, because I know people personally who have played in the National Basketball Association, that they do have classes where they teach them etiquette, where they teach them how to talk to reporters, where they teach them how to conduct themselves. They've always had it. I know people that were playing in the league during the time when this was going on. And I asked the questions, and I know that they know better. Having said that, on what planet does anybody think that it's all right to run into the stands
It's not.
and fight against fans
Not.
unless you work for Vincent K. McMahon? That's the only time that it's okay. And even then it's not okay, because a fan that runs into the to wrestling is going to get the brakes beat off of them. But notice, you don't see the wrestlers running into the stands assaulting the fans. It's never going to be okay. And if we want to sit here and say, you know what, the fans initiated it and he was just retaliating, he's a man first. If that's your position,
Not mine.
I can't argue that position. If that's how you feel, then that's just how you feel. But for me, there is a certain level of responsibility that you have when you're a player, or to bring it back to more a personal example, if you're a police officer, you're the one that's trained. You're the one that knows better. You're the one that knows what you can do and what you can't do. A fan, like you said, that's been sitting there looking up all night, that his team is losing, that thinks that it's a good idea to throw his beer bottle at somebody, I'm not absolving that person, and that person needs to and did get punished for it. But I hold me, Marcus J., one person whose team disagrees with, I hold the player in a greater esteem with regards to responsibility, and I'm not blaming the ownership. I'm blaming the individual who snapped, ran into the stands, and I'm blaming his teammate who rode with him. Now, I blame Steven Jackson a little bit less, even though I think he deserves the same penalty Ron Artest got, even though he didn't get it. I would have been okay with it if he got it. I'm glad he didn't get it. I'd have been okay if he got it. But you can't run into the stands, man.
We agree.
You can't do
We
that.
agree on that.
You just can't do that. Ain't no how Steppin, Marcus J. live from New Den Legacy and that radio. All right, let's move on, because it's getting late early, as Jogi would say. Hakeem says, never mind the fact that Artest went in the stands and started hooking off on the wrong dude.
He did get the wrong
He
dude.
got the
But
wrong-
look, I
And
got
the
a
other dude called himself holding him back.
But
It's
he-
like,
no,
it
he
was
punched him in the
you.
face first.
he got the wrong dude.
But
No, I'm
here
saying
goes the problem.
that the dude
He
that
The guy
threw
is
the
John
bottle.
Green,
He got the-
and that made my life miserable
Yeah,
for years.
yeah,
That John
John
Green
Green did that.
threw the
Ain't no how
beer.
Stell Marcus J live for New Dan Legacy already. All right, let's move on. We were going to get to Nichelle Nichols of Star Trek. We'll talk about that next week. That's a story that's not time stamped.
No.
It's not time sensitive, so we can move that to
Yeah,
next week.
Britney Spears with that too, right?
Yeah, please. I don't ever want to talk about her on this show ever.
Okay.
Yeah, never. We're never talking about Britney Spears here ever.
We can't talk about conservatorship without addressing it.
She's
That's-
like the
that's
poster
space
child
it
for
lives
it.
in.
Yeah.
Y'all
Sorry. It's
make
news. It's
me
town news.
sick.
How news works, Mr.
I
Journalist
don't
man.
want to talk about her. Maybe next week y'all might be able to convince me if we can connect it to Nichelle Nichols. Ain't no how Stell Marcus J live from New Dan Legacy in that radio. All right, we're looking for Diamond Turner. Diamond Turner is missing from here in the capital city, Henrico more specifically. Diamond's a black female who stands 5'8", weighs 300 pounds. Been missing since August 13th. Diamond was last seen wearing gray t-shirt, black leggings, black and white Van sneakers, has scars on her left arm and tongue piercing. Diamond was last seen in the company of Courtney Walker, who is also listed as a missing juvenile. She requires medication and may be in need of medical attention. If you've seen Diamond Turner, please contact the Henrico County Police Department at 804-501-5000. We're also looking for Joseph Lewis, missing since August 14th here in the Cap City, Richmond, Virginia. Joseph is a 16-year-old black male who stands 5'8", weighs 140 pounds. Joseph was last seen wearing a blue hat, blue Levi shirt, black skinny jeans, black and white Nike Air Jordan shoes, and he has a tattoo on his chest. He requires medication and may be in the need of medical attention. If you've seen Joseph Lewis, please contact the Richmond City Police Department at 804-646-5100. So if you've seen Joseph Lewis or if you've seen Diamond Turner, please contact the National Center for Missing and/or Exploited Children at website missingkids.org. Contact them by phone at 1-800-THE-LOST, 1-800-843-5678. All right, so we're also at this time of the show, make sure that we get in our moment in Black history. So let's see, 2006. On this actual day, 2006, nearly 55 years after civil rights activists Harry and Harriet Moore were killed by a bomb, a renewed investigation finds 4 now deceased KKK members were responsible. So they got justice posthumously. 1963, 9 years after Brown versus Board of Education school desegregation ruling, 32 teenagers are jailed for protesting segregated schools, public education in Prince Edward County, right here in Virginia. 1965, you got the Watts Wyatts. The Watts Wyatts. Wow. Okay. The Watts riots. The Watts riots, of course, was sparked by white police beating of a young black male, leaving 34 dead, over 1,000 injured, nearly 4,000 arrested, and $40 million in damage. You mean to tell me in 1965 the police was busting heads and causing riots? Well, I'll be damned. I would have never known.
Right.
1995, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People protests National Park Service decision under pressure from the Sons of Confederate Veterans and Senator Jesse Helms to remove covering from, quote, Faithful Slave Monument, also here in Virginia, in Harper's Ferry. Last one, and we all will remember 2016 in St. Anthony, Minnesota, police officer Geronimo Yanez returns to duty this week before officials complete investigations into his fatal shooting of Philando Castile during their traffic stop a few weeks earlier. I said that was it, but I'm gonna get one more. I actually said this earlier, did not realize on this day in history, but when I mentioned 1619, Dutch ship lands in Jamestown, Virginia, carrying the first enslaved people to what would become the United States. Well, I'll be damned. I did not
Look at
realize
that.
when I said that earlier that it will come up on this date in history. Well, I'll be damned. I tell you, serendipity is a really cool thing, and I ain't jiving. Ain't no how Steppin Marcus J Live from New Den, Legacy Internet Radio. All right, so Ronaldo is checking in. He says they were looking for the smoke by throwing that drink, and when they got the real smoke from the athletes, it's what they deserve. Too bad Ron Artest didn't swing on the dude who actually threw the drink. Yes, sir. We just mentioned that, Ronaldo, and I appreciate you rocking with us. And you were absolutely right. He ran past the dude and ended up going for the wrong dude, and the dude that actually deserved his ire was trying to hold him off of the dude that he was trying to beat the brakes off. How funny, but not funny that is. All right, so it's time for us to close us out with our rants, with the closings. And let me give some flowers first, of course, starting with my brother John. Brother, I appreciate you. I appreciate your intellect. I appreciate your fire. One thing that I will never, ever, ever question about you is your love for our people. And for that, we will always be on the same page. You love us, and because of that, we love you. Thank you,
Agreed.
brother. Thank you for being John. Thank you. Time for you to rock the mic, brother. Close us out.
I'm gonna try to make the rant quick, get us out of here. First thing I want to say is this: people, COVID is real. It's not a joke. You can get sick, you can die. Right? The vaccine will help prevent you from getting sick and dying. If there's nothing else you need to know that. Right? I can get into a whole bunch of percentages and this and that and so on and so forth. But again, it's like dealing with white people. Do we really have the time to sort through the odds? We don't. So let's deal with the fact that it's a possibility. A possibility should be enough to give you precaution. And if you, that's all I can say about it. It's possible. Probable, I can't really tell you how probable. Not likely, but possible that you could die or someone you know could die because of this disease. Then take every measure possible to prevent that death. That's all I could tell you. This country has been a lie since it was an idea. It exists and operates under the most cruel operations that anyone could imagine, right? We just talked about 1619, and we talk about all this stuff, and we say things quickly and we don't examine them. In 1619, they brought some Africans to here, but they never tell you about all the Africans who are already here, that they met here. If you read back in the history books and you even read some of their writings, they're still around. You could find them someplace. If you look hard enough, they'll describe the people that they met on the shores here in Virginia, how they looked like African people, and they had the woolly dark hair, and they were black-skinned people. That's what the people who first came here in the 1500s first talked about. These people, the so-called Indians, who they talk about. So black people, African people here, and they don't describe huts or wigwams, teepees, any of that. They describe cities. Larger than London were the words that they used, with houses that you could see for miles. These are who they found here. They didn't find people squalling around in what Tarzan was wearing and all that crap. No, that's not what was here. Nor did they run into some of the plain folk that who lived in the plain areas in the middle of the country, and they didn't run into them either. They ran into civilized people with a system of government that they adopted into the Constitution that we use. It's not parliamentary. comes from the Iroquois Nation. So know all of this when you're dealing with things going on around you, when you're dealing with information being thrown at you rapidly. And I'm not taking it back. Most people are dumb. Most people are stupid. And most of the time, it's not their fault. The education system is meant to miseducate, is meant to keep you at a certain level so that you'll be willing to work yourself into a grave to make somebody else rich. That's what this country is. It's a work camp. It's a slave camp. It was set up like that many years ago to bring people to come work off their prison sentences in order to make landowners and barons wealthy. It has not changed. Has not changed, not even a little bit. And the experiment is working and it's successful. With that information, it's not an excuse for you to be in poverty because you have the information of the world in your hand. Take some time, do some research, make yourself valuable, and sneak through the cracks. Everybody's not going to make it. Most are going to fail, but don't let it be you. Find a way, make a way, do something, better yourself. Education. One thing you will have that no one could ever take from you is your education. People always say time is money. No, it isn't. Time is so much more valuable than money. Money is non-existent. You can always make money. You cannot make time. So spend your time wisely, better than you spend your money. Do something with yourself, educate yourself, be somebody. That's my rant.
How Steppin Marcus J live from New Den Legacy Internet Radio. Steph, it's time for you to rock the mic. I appreciate you. I mean, you always bring a voice of reason when John and I getting a little out of control. You had this way of bringing a little bit of balance, and I need that, and he needs that. We need that. I think you need it too. You bring a calm, and I like that. I like that you do that for us, and I appreciate you.
I'm glad because I'm not always the calmest.
You have the energy
but
when it's us. I think when the three of us leave and we go to our other relationships in our lives, we all play different positions and stuff.
Yep.
But you have a way of you got this calm when you're here. I can dig it. Sometimes, I got to peel myself and John off of each other so that you can talk. So I appreciate it. I don't want to bring the point up too much, but just know those your flowers. Get to sniffing.
I appreciate
it.
They smell like roses.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Go.
I appreciate you both. I appreciate both of your perspectives, and the fact that I know you always come from a good place. So thank you both. I appreciate that. Appreciate being here with you. My rant is more of a recommendation. Critical thinking is a necessity. And it's not just a necessity when you're processing politics and policy. It is a necessity for our youth. I had the opportunity as a parent to help my daughter, who is 23, process a pretty big event in her life, something she had not run up against, right? So we can't, as adults, always prepare our children as parents for everything. Sometimes you got to let those instances come up and jump in there and say, okay, great. This is a new learning opportunity. And what I realized as I was processing how she and I worked through the situation together, one of the best things that I did as a parent was step into coaching mode when my children were in high school. 9th grade is when it started, and it continued through senior year. And Black children need this. They need parents who listen to their perspectives, hear them out, even when you don't agree, spend less time focusing on surface level things that are not going to have any true bearing later in life. May not love the way they dress. No generation loves the way the next generation dresses. It is what it is. Pick your battles. Become someone that speaks to your children in such a way that they see that you view them as a viable, reasonable human being capable of ration. and that they're capable of thinking things through themselves. The generations of just do as I say, not as I do, telling children exactly what to do all the time without making them think this through, those generations handicapped generations afterward. They made it harder for individuals who would be Gen X to go into a workspace and challenge the culture paradigms of corporate America, or challenge the paradigms, the cultural paradigms of university systems. I would say, and I'm saying this specifically in a space of Black parenting, because we often parent from a position of discipline. We're kind of many Black parents are put in a position of where you're doing exactly what law enforcement does. There's no protecting and serving; it's all enforcing. And when you do that with your children, you leave them in a space that, when it's time for them to make good decisions, you never taught them how. When it's time for them to start managing money, you never really taught them how. You didn't give them examples of how money works in the household, because that's adult conversation. No, bills become everybody's conversation, unless your child walks into immediate wealth all of a sudden at 18. And we know that statistically is not happening for young Black children. So I would challenge you that today, if you are a parent that finds yourself giving more directives and commands than helping your child get to the point of understanding how to make decisions, even if it's painful, teach them how to do it while they're still in your household, while they're still in a safety net of, okay, I'm going to teach you how to make a decision. Step back. Don't let them walk into a hole, but step back and allow them to walk themselves through the process and make the decision they actually want to while they're still with you. There is nothing that will make your life easier as a parent of adult children than feeling that you taught them how to be reasonable, rational thinkers and critical processors of their own lives. This is going to be a necessity. It's never going to go away. If we want the next generation of children to be able to step up and take over the reins, even if it doesn't look exactly like the way you managed it in way back when, it's important to begin to teach them the process of critical thinking right now. I don't care if you have a third grader or a fourth grader, you can start the process. You can get in there. And by the time they're in high school, they should be legitimately making decisions about their own lives, or being able to talk through with you and justify, validate, or present their arguments respectfully on how things are done. As somebody who works in a professional, or as a professional salesperson, runs a sales firm, it's one of the things that I often see is people are not capable of presenting the value of their arguments. They're only capable of arguing. And often in my space, in my world, that means nothing. You're telling, not selling. These kids are going to have to learn how to get out there and sell themselves, sell their ideas, sell their value to the greater communities. And it has to start somewhere. And if you're a parent that doesn't know that process, link up with other parents who do. I know you know the parents in your space that you probably think are too loose and free with their children. They're probably doing something right. And that's my recommendation for tonight.
Ain't no half stepping, Marcus Shea live from New Den Legacy Internet Radio. First, I want to thank everybody who has been rocking with us tonight. We appreciate it. Very special thank you to our regulars. You guys rock with us every single week, and I just want to make sure that you guys know that that means a lot to us. We shout you out because you guys are special to us. To those folks who don't make their presence known, that's fine. We love you and we value you all the same. I've seen it read. I've seen it written. What's up with this? I'm having trouble tonight, but I've seen it written on more than one occasion that less than 1% of the people who listen to radio shows will make themselves known. I bear that out because I very seldom will call in, and I do listen to a lot of shows throughout the day. I'm kind of a podcast junkie, and I almost never will call in. So I appreciate those folks who are rocking with us and like to do so in the secrecy or the quiet of their own homes or cars or headphones. So I want to make that piece very, very clear and very, very plain. I also want to kind of speak a little bit about our friends. Our friends. Don't forget our friends. And today I want you to check them. Our friends who defended any of the actions of the people on January 6th. A lot of them were defending the at that time president. A lot of them were defending the people who showed up on the steps that day. A lot of them were defending the people wearing MAGA hats and Confederate flags roaming the halls, defending them and saying that it was okay that they were out there doing the things that they were doing. But somehow they got so much to say about the leadership now that we've had this turn of events in Afghanistan. These people ain't had no shade for the instigator of January 6th. They ain't had no shade for the people who perpetrated it. Some of them actually called it a terrorist event, and some of them actually denied that we saw what we all saw. We need to be checking these people, like for real. We need to check them because they're dangerous. And you know, if you're someone who knows these people and you know the lunacy of which they speak, you know, check them on the spot. Who knows if it'll matter? It probably won't. But I'm not interested in walking around next to people who I know think and say stupid shit. I'm either going to not be around them or I'm going to check them every time they say stupid shit. And for the record, what happened on January 6th and what happened in Afghanistan are absolutely embarrassing albatrosses that didn't have to happen. And I think they both were a result of poor leadership at the core. Both can be really bad if we continue walking around acting like the people who are celebrating this nonsense on the right side of history. That's not okay with me. It doesn't matter if these people are blue, if they're red, if they're purple. They just need to be rational. And a lot of them are not rational. The partisans have a hard time acknowledging this. You need to be careful because your hypocrisy is beginning to show again. That is the Marcus's unrelated rant that has very little, well, in tonight's case, kind of a lot to do with what we in here talking about tonight on the show, which is the end. I want to remind everybody that independence is the key to building your legacy. I also want to say peace to all of the stars and all of the squares. In the abundance of water, the fool is thirsty. Those are the words of Bob Marley, who you hear singing in the background. Authenticity has no competition. Ain't no half stabbing with Marcus J. Will be back live from New Den of Legacy Internet Radio next week with a very special guest. You need to tune in to see who it is. For John, for Steph, yours truly, Marcus J. I'm saying peace, y'all. Holler back at your boy. Peace and love.
Oh yeah. I'm with this, with it. I'm just gonna lay back and I'ma drop some smooth lyrics. So tune in 7 to 9:30 and don't be late. About to set it straight. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J. Word. I'm ready, let's go. Ain't no half stepping, that's the name of the show. Yeah, Marcus J hosting and we ready to go. Yeah, Hunters talk sprinkle with a dash of humor to the legacy listeners and the online viewers. What you wanna talk about, call it, we're hearing you. Cover all topics, touch on the main issues. With you flowing this show, bring the heat. The word on the street, Wizard Earl on the beat. We superb in the D, legacy online. 7 to 9:30, please be on time. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J, my brother. If they can't hang, word to their mother. And he been on this grind for a while. The brother so smart, plus brother got style. Up in Richmond, we on the mission, we full force. And listen up, this Marcus Stage start to talk, running back. And he been on this grind for a while. The brother so smart, plus brother got style. Up in Richmond, we on the mission, we full force. And listen up, this Marcus Stage start to talk. half stepping, that's the name of the show. Yeah, Marcus J hosting and we ready to go. Yeah, Hunters talk sprinkled with a dash of humor to the legacy listeners and the online viewers. What you wanna talk about, call it, we're hearing you. Cover all topics, touch on the main issues. With the flow in this show, bring the heat. The word on the street, Wizard Earl on the beat. We superb in the D, legacy online. 7 and 9:30, please be on time. Ain't no half stepper with Marcus J, my brother. If they can't hang, word to their mother. And he been on this grind for a while. My brother so smart, plus brother got style. Up in Richmond, we on the mission, before force. And listen up, this Marcus J start to talk.